Morning, I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Members of the panel today, to my far left is Mr. Ron Merritt. To my immediate left is Ms. Linda McFadgen. My name is Stu McPherson, I'll be chairing the hearing today. Representing the City of Winnipeg Assessment Taxation Department is Mr. Matthew Perokas, and the secretary for today's hearing is Ms. Kelsey Harrison. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to those matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council. It's independent of it and the City Administration. It makes decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed at each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they so wish. Once all the evidence of an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave, and the process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. Just as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Can you swear the parties in, please?
You affirm, right?
Yep.
Could you please state your name?
Matthew Rokas.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Could you please state your name?
Matthew Newton.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Morning, Mr. Neufeld. You're representing the owners of two properties today, and it's the amount of assessed value only that we're dealing with?
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Assessor, we'll hear from you when you're ready, please, starting with 2391 Portage, which will be item 4 on our agenda.
File number 19-4494, roll number 0706 to 074, 9000, 2391 Portage Avenue. Assessed value $6,631,000. Roll year 2020, April 1st, 2018, reference date. It's an apartment. It's on Portage Avenue. 2 buildings. Actual year built 1959, effective year built 1974. 46 suites, 30 indoor parking, 34 outdoor parking spots. Construction class C masonry garden walls. If you go to page 2, you can see that they've been handing in the mailers as of late. Subject sale recorded in July of 2008, so 11 years ago, 2.8 million. Page 3 shows our income value summary. 14 one-bedroom, 32 two-bedroom units for the 46 total units. All rent, we've got $1,188.45. With our parameters, here we've got with our cap rate at 5.3. As per age, area, and size, comes out to 6.63. 30792 surround to 6.631. We've got our rent comparables on page 4 of the property. So these are properties that are near the subject. They are newer than the subject property. You'll see by their effective year built. In regards to their suite composition, 1, 3, and 4 are predominantly 1 and 2 bedroom units. Comparable number 2 is the one built in 97. It's mostly 1 bedroom units. They have 1 bachelor in there as well. So looking at the average monthly rent per unit, our subject property with the model rent of $1,188 is slightly below the comparables. I did a quick calculation on this. When you see a chart at the bottom, income and expenses and reported expense ratio, using our model cap of 5.3 would generate a value of 7.75. That was taken from the income and expense mailer submitted on page 6A rather. That's where those numbers come from. Page 4A on this one. The page following the rent comparables shows a sample of some actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose of showing these individual rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model, to substantiate the model derived cap rates that are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. So the third table down, you'll see the apartment cap rates. Then we have our cap rate chart, as usual, on page 5. If you go to page 10, you'll see where the source of the effective age came from. There was work done 2013, permit taken up 2013, including page 10 says demolishing all interior walls and reconstructing new partition walls to create 42 new units. Page 11 shows that they developed some space in the basement to create 4 more suites. Page 12 is a window replacement, setting of the interior from the walls. Page 13 shows advertisement of the place, so you get an idea of what it looks like. Yeah, it says 2391 Forges nestled in the heart of St. James, close to Cinnamon Park, Polo Park Shopping Center, and all major bus routes offering easy access to major grocery stores, restaurants, and shopping. So then the rest of my report here is just pictures, just so you can see that it's not original to 1959, and the work that was done, which necessitated the effective age being put on it. That's my notes.
Your presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Neufeld,
Page,
questions?
yes, page 3, evaluation, is this all model generated?
I believe so. I don't have any noted what any overrides.
All right, this is that I've never seen nice round numbers like 45% expenses.
Yeah, well,
Usually,
that one could be an override. I don't have any notes in regards to the one who did that.
oh, okay. And you mentioned there's renovations done between 2011 and 13?
Yeah, the permits here are indicating, well, on page 11, we've got a permit Oh, pardon me. Yeah. That was the time, Chris. We're at page 12, we've got a permit for September 15th, 2010. So it looks like 10 to 13 is when they took out their work orders.
Okay. And 10 is fairly extensive by the sounds of it. They demolished all interior walls and made new partition walls. So there was a unit count change?
Existing, yeah, so the exterior alterations, existing 6-story, 36 unit multiple family. So yeah, there was a unit count change. They added some units to the basement as well.
And, okay, and you mentioned that they added 4 suites. So just a little bit puzzled here. I'm gonna go back in time here, and I maybe might not have this information, but the first permit said that it was 6 stories, 36 units. That's page 12.
Yes.
Okay, and then the next permit, page 10, they made 42 units? Is that out of the 36?
Yeah, that's how it's reading.
And then page 11, create 4 more suites?
Yeah, so the 4 would be added to the 42 to get 46.
Okay. Do you have a copy of their cover page for the mailer? Like, you got the statements here. Do you have
Oh, no.
their claim of how many units they had?
No, I do not.
And page 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, are these all dated the same as what's shown on page 19, which is March 2015?
13, 14, 15. Yes, this would have been from the same time.
2015,
Yes.
okay. And you have 2 years of statements here, 16 and 17. Would you consider that vacancy is a bit, or on the high side, or did you investigate that?
I was running out of time getting this one in. I just did a quick summary. I didn't look into vacancy or anything like that.
But on page 6A, how do you deal with the residential discount? Are you just assuming that that's the difference between the RTB registered rates and the actual rates? And then the residential vacancy of 22,941 is actual market?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. And the expenses, repairs and maintenance, did you compare them? I mean, this is a newly reconstructed building, so I noticed that the first year they were 17,000, rising to 80,000. Have they stabilized, do you believe?
If you take 80,000, 157, and divide it just solely by that number, you come to about 1742 a unit.
But the previous year is 378 a unit though, right?
Yeah, and so 2017 would definitely be more representative of the operation of the building.
I don't disagree, more representative, but has it stabilized was my question.
I would think that going forward, it would be plus or minus a bit around that figure.
Okay, and has the property taxes been recalculated? Because obviously it changed, didn't it?
I'm sorry, can you explain that?
Well, when you renovate a property and it goes up in value, the property taxes will change, won't they?
Yeah, definitely.
And when was that catch up? Do you think that's reflected in that 2017 statement?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, do you have last year's assessment?
last year's assessment, 6,296,000.
Okay. Those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick, questions for the assessor?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barakis, I guess according to the permits, they spent a little bit of money, about 2.7, is that correct?
Let's see,
What you, over that, I'm sorry. Close to 3 million, I guess. That's two, no, it's, is that?
plus
Okay.
150. Yeah, I did 2.85, so
Yeah,
around.
so it's close to 3 million, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So, so the suite count from the original was 36 to 46, eh?
Yeah.
So they added 10 suites over time?
The way I'm reading it is that they re-demised it was 36 before, then they split up the area not in the basement to 42 suites, and then they added 4 suites in the basement.
Did you get a chance to inspect the property?
No, I haven't inspected any of them with docket today.
So the pictures that are here, these are probably just from their site?
Yeah, and this was taken from March of 2015.
And you feel as if the cap rate should be in the 5.3?
As per the model, age, area, and size, that's what got assigned to this property, yes.
Okay. I thank you. I thank you.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Just the photos, you see those are from March of 15, to the best of your knowledge, from their website?
Yeah, that's what we have on page 19.
Except probably 20 and 21 were done separately. Doesn't look like website photos necessarily. Inspection photos.
In the last page says inspection photos.
So this property was last inspected in 2015?
Yes. I don't have any notes in regards to anything since then.
Okay, and the cap rate of 5.3% that you said is based on age, area, size.
Yes.
1974 variant age, does that come into play on a, I guess, a strata of age groups?
Let's see here, 15. Based on this size, 74 is the upper range of the 5.3. At 75, it would have got a 5 cap. 59 and 74 will both get 5.3.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more
Follow up,
question?
yes.
Yeah. Mr. Barakis, I noticed that we might as well talk about it. There's no 5% recovery or management fee applicable to the evaluation for the subject?
Not on apartments.
Not on apartments? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Too used. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Neufeld, we'll hear from you, please.
I just had a follow-up question. You brought up the permit costs and you were questioned on 2.85 million, I believe is what you said.
Yeah.
That's what the permit says, though. You don't have actual costs, do you?
No, yeah, I don't have any actual.
Could have been less, could have been more.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is a new building for us. One of our clients took this over, and so we don't have a lot of background statement information. We do know that it is a post-renovation building that is still stabilizing, both in vacancy and repair and maintenance and tax costs. The repair and maintenance on a newly renovated building are, generally you have a first couple of years after the renovation where you're not gonna have to spend a lot of money, but they end up catching up on you later. So looking at the statements and this, we, actually, we're just going to use the assessment department's NOI, and I noticed that it looks like, for some reason, it's an error. Normally, we can plug into the system and see what it is. We don't have it with this one because it's a new one, so we're gonna change our NOI to match the assessor at 351,432. And we're gonna request a 6% cap rate, which brings our value to $5,857,200, rounded to 5,857. And you will note that when you add up the costs, the purchase cost plus the permit values, that total is $5,650,000. In this case, the amount of, or the depth of the alterations exceeded most because there was actually a redemising of the interior walls. So with most renovation projects, you wouldn't have seen the scope of work. So it is on the high side, without that, it would have been much lower, and our number is reasonably in line on that basis. As far as the cap rates, we have page 32. We have several cap rates. Briefly, 228 Notre Dame, this is an older building that was renovated, I believe, about 10 years ago. Downtown, 5.53. 1830 Portage, which is just down the street. This was 6.58%. There's a small commercial portion in the back of this. The Fort Rouge and Wolseley, I haven't been able to disclose the addresses, but these are vintage. You can see by the age of them that they're a bit older, and both were renovated. East Kildonan, oh, I wonder why that address wasn't in there. Okay, never mind, about 6.3%, that was vintage. The next is the best sale that occurred in Winnipeg, and this is, I don't know why it even gets debated, but it was 5.5% at 333 Ward. And if we have to get into it, maybe in the next hearing, I'll show you some more information. And then lastly, a triplex on Sarah, which ended up being about 8.14 prior to renovation and 9.99 after renovation. And the reason you can calculate those numbers is you can actually take the cost, the renovation cost, plus the new income projected after sale. So if you have all those details, it makes for improved accuracy. The downside on this particular property is the original age. It doesn't matter what variant age you put on it, because you don't change the structure, the foundation, or major elements of the envelope. So it's still a 1959 building. This concept of trying to put a variant age is, in the appraisal world, we have a name for it. It's called the foot wedge for you golfing fans, and you know what that is. I need to bump up my value a bit, so just give it a little bit. There's no reason for it. You can't. It's not reasonable to change the age. It's not logical, because you're not extending the remaining economic life when your frame, your foundation did not change. The other thing I don't like about it is the interior parking, which is riskier. It's a moisture trap, and most of places with indoor parking run huge repair and maintenance costs because of the chemicals used in the road, which are now nicer, but they're still dragged into the building, and the humidity which gets in, and snow falls off cars, warms up, it gets into all the walls and the work and parging, and cement breaks down, and that's just the unhealthy cycle. That's my presentation.
Thank you. questions for the applicant?
Yeah. So the work, demolishing the interior walls and reconstruction, partition walls, and building new suites in the basement, that wouldn't extend the economic life of the property in your?
Absolutely not, because it's interior renovation. I mean, first of all, most of it was interior renovation. Now, moving and demising a wall, doesn't change the life of the property. It's like this building, if you took that wall and moved it out, you don't make it newer. The only thing that makes it newer is to address the major elements of it. Routine maintenance is gonna occur throughout this building's life, and those elements will get changed again and again and again. But the frame, foundation, and the envelope are the key elements. They don't change.
Would you consider the windows as part of the exterior frame?
Well, no, it's part of the envelope. So you replace the windows, they're done for thermal efficiency. And the window replacement happens through the life of the building. Most buildings of this vintage would have already have had one change at some point. And I don't know what the original construction was, if it was wood or aluminum sliders, but that's just part of continued ongoing work where they, you know, they start with wood, they go to aluminum sliders, sometimes then after that to fixed aluminum, sealed aluminum, and then to PVC or fiberglass.
Do you know if they got a rent control exemption after the renovation?
No, they didn't, because they're registered, and the reason, my reason for that conclusion is just to look at the statements, and I'd asked you earlier if you had noticed that the rent discount. So when I see that, my conclusion is that they registered their rents already higher. They did not get an exemption, because otherwise that number would have been huge. It was a line item, there was a fixed percentage amount that they register it. They don't collect the money because the market still won't pay what they want, but it's there for optimism, hoping they'll get more at some point. But even if they had, it's long expired, because they're only 5 years on.
Because it says on my page 8, their residential rent was.
Mr. Brokus,
Oh.
I don't want to
Right.
cut you off, but I think it's a cap rate issue. I think the applicant has accepted your NOI,
Okay,
so if you could maybe,
okay. And just on your page 32, which one of these sales would be most similar to the subject?
I'd have to say 1830 Portage, because of location and age. Although this hasn't really had, it's had some work done on it. What we would call above block guideline increases and work on it. Not to the major extent, interior extent that the subject do, but again, the frame, foundation, envelope are still the same, and you'll note that those windows have been replaced. You can see that they're PVC.
Those are my questions, thanks.
I thank you. Mr. Merrick?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
And I have none.
I guess just the cap rate, your optimal for this type of property is 5.75.
Let me just double check
I
that.
think that's what you've got. on your-
Yeah. Well, yeah, something like this would be, I don't know if I'd really classify this as a high-rise with 6 stories. I think high-rise is a bit more modern, but you can see page 21, our range between 5.5 and 6.75. So a good rate for this age would be 5.75. 575, which would go to 6, is basically, in my opinion, is the interior parking. It's a great selling feature, but it's a big downside risk because of what you're gonna have to do in the future. It's cleaner just to have outside parking in the suburbs, but,
And I think your comment was that you didn't really consider this to be a high-rise?
No, no.
What is your definition of a high-rise?
Well, the strictest definition is whatever isn't a low-rise. And usually people classify low-rise as 3 or 4 stories. I guess when I'm thinking high-rise, I'm thinking of towers. I'm thinking 8, 12, 20 stories. And this is, okay, I'll call it a mid-rise.
Do you have cap rates for mid-rise?
That's a good question. Not really. Well, actually, these ones which I haven't given you the address on, Fort Rouge and Wolseley, are, I think they're 5 stories, one of them. And I didn't give you the address, so
Yeah,
it's unfair for me to,
place too much weight on them.
well, to expect you to put weight on it, I can place weight on them. Oh, I missed page 33, I didn't even read that. There was one more I wanted to point out in page 33, 26 and 45 Hargrave, same age as the subject, although they're 3-story, 6.62. We were, so 1959 construction, 2011 renovation, identical. We did the deal, I have the documents in my file, the parties agreed at an amount that was 6.62%.
But you would agree that that is a low-rise?
Yes. But I'm not putting too much weight in the differential between the two of them. I mean, I'm thinking high-rise would be like, you know, like a tower.
Thank you. Desire for a summation on this property, either party? Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, which is 2515 Portage. When you're ready, Mr. Assessor, please.
Okay, file number 19-4573, roll number 0707, 509-4000, assessed value $7,396,000 for the roll year 2020, April 1st, 2018 reference date. It's an apartment, 2 buildings, 6 stories. 1960, we don't have any effective year bill applied to it. 89 suites, 80 indoor, 10 outdoor parking spots, 2515 Portage Avenue. Construction class C, masonry ground walls. If you go to page 2, you'll see that they've been handing in their mailers. Page 3, of the 89 suites, we got 19 bachelor, 37 1-bedroom, and 33 2-bedroom. We got an average monthly rent of $810. 2.6 vacancy rate was applied, and the 5.3 cap as per age, area, and size to generate our estimated market value of $7,396,000 rounded. If you go to page 4, you'll see rent comparables that are in the area. So look at our effective year builds. It's bracketed by the comparables. Break down the suites as per bedroom type, are similar, comparable to this house and bachelor units. The average monthly rent is also bracketed. For this one, on page 5, I was able to take more time on it. And I did some work looking at the actuals based on the mailer to see how they compare to what the model was kicking out. These numbers are taken from page 8 to 15, which takes you to the end of my brief. So, took the most recent reported income on this property on page 8. And they didn't fill out this section on the back of page 8, which I also have marked as page 8 for vacancy. It looks like their potential on page 9, what they're reporting is a lot higher than what they say they're getting, but because I wasn't able to tell if there was discounts or how much of that would be vacancy, I just took the most recent effective gross income receipt. Then I took the numbers and then I stabilized them using the 5% management, the most recent utilities, and I took the R&M from 15, or rather 16 and 17 to see what sort of per unit that would come out as. It's $16.29 per unit. That is more along the lines of what we see for 89 suites. If you're looking at, I excluded 2015. If you go 288, 891, and you divide that by 89 suites, you get 3,245 per suite, which is a lot higher than what we typically see when we're going through income and expense mailers. So 1629 is more reasonable. If I was able to look at that number and see if they broke out any cap from it, like with a more detailed statement, I'd be able to perhaps pull some capital costs out of that 2015 R&M amount of 288,000 and be able to average that revised number. But the 1629 using 15 and 16 was per unit was used. And then in 2017, you'll see that there was a really big elevator cost, which is not what an investor was expected to spend on a yearly basis. So I just averaged 15 and 16. So stabilizing using the 5.3 cap. This scenario would be 8.1 million. We're at 7.396. So using this scenario, it would be higher, but I'm not asking for an increase today or anything like that. Page 6 and 6A are our cap rate evidence, and we have the mailers on page 8 to 15. So the comparables support the rents, and it looks like when you take a look at what they reported on a normalized 3-year actual basis, the assessment is not too high. That's my evidence. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfeld, questions for the assessor?
Yes, what was the, page 3, was this model?
It was reviewed by somebody, and then they adjusted the rents to be more reflective of the actuals.
Okay, so what, do you know what they were beforehand?
No.
So, was there anything else changed?
No. Looks like the expense ratio is not a round number.
Have you inspected?
No, I have not.
Your work up on page 5, just a couple of questions about this. on the expenses you've stabilized. You have in your hydro range, it's between 12.5 and 12.7. You stabilized it at 12.5, which is the lowest end of the range. To your knowledge, have hydro rates gone down?
I took the most recent years, as that's the most recent information the purchaser would have in regards to what rates would be going forward.
Well, aren't most utilities dependent on the weather? And doesn't the weather change every year?
It is, the rate also doesn't remain the same. Typically, I've seen other, when I've seen other appellants stabilize, they always use their most recent year.
For utilities?
Yes.
So you've observed somebody else doing that, and you thought that was a good practice?
Well, it seems that that's what they're doing, that's what we're doing. I was just saying what I'm doing is in line with what others are doing.
Your same question on the heat, your range is 33.6 to 45.3, and you've applied the lowest end of the range. Same question there. Have gas prices gone down?
Again, I don't know the specific gas prices for the year. That's also if they replace windows, if they make the building more efficient in ways, that would also have an effect.
Do you know what that number is?
What number?
Sure. You just said windows will make it more efficient, do you know?
No, I'm just
Do you know if
saying,
and when windows were replaced?
no, I'm saying that it's more than just the weather.
Do you have the weather statistics?
I left them at home.
I always enjoy your answers. And I'm just like, no, it's fine, I'm not taking, you did virtually the same thing with the repair and maintenance. You went to the lower end of the scale. Is there anything to suggest that capital expenses were in there?
Well, 2015 definitely seemed really high. So based on the mailers we see when we're able to, like the more detailed ones where we can break out capital expenditures, it's more in the range of, for this vintage of building, at least, what, 16 and 17 are indicating. So I opted to average those instead.
So without benefit of an inspection, or you don't know what was spent, do you?
No, there's no detailed breakdown.
The elevator, I think your statement was an investor would not expect to pay $76,000 in 1 year for the elevator. And how would they stop the elevator from breaking down?
No, I meant like every year they wouldn't.
But you haven't seen these elevators, have you?
No, I have not inspected these properties.
So wouldn't it go the other way? The potential investor would say, well, it was 10,000 one year, it's 76,000 the next. I got a problem here. I'm gonna budget to be safe. Isn't that? Don't you think they would think that way?
I mean, if they're looking at buying it, they would see that the thing just got fixed.
And might break again.
That's possible, yes.
Page 6A, are you relying on these? I'm just curious because they are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property is what it says above. Are you relying on them to be specific to the subject property?
No.
Okay. Are you aware that there are certain multifamily units listed here that were provided from an appraisal rather than from actual workup?
No, I'm not aware.
You said that, I think, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but as I seem to understand, page 9, potential suite income at 100% differed greatly from page 8, which was actual income. Did you investigate why? I heard you making some assumptions, but do you know specifically why that happened?
No, I wasn't able to gather that from the mailer.
Those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Borkus, the subject was built in 1960, and you're using a cap rate of 5.3. Wouldn't your cap rate, based on the age, be a little higher?
No, for this age area and size, it gets a 5.3.
Thank you, thank you.
Ms. Confession?
Similar to following that line of questioning, so the previous building had the 5.3 and it took it up to just below the
Threshold.
threshold that would have switched it to a different rate.
Yeah.
You don't have any record or renovations that have been done on this building at all? That might account for the discrepancy in the rents, for example, or?
That's correct. This is not in the condition of the previous property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You said that this is model driven with the exception of the monthly rent.
Yes.
So when the monthly rent is adjusted, is the expense ratio maintained at 53.48%? Or is that a result of
Oh,
the adjusted rent?
the percentage would be the same, just the number,
The
the
number
percentage
would be
acts
same.
upon
Same percentage would be applied,
to
It would
the
change.
revised fence.
so it would be, if the rent was lowered, the actual dollar amount would be lower.
Yes.
Is that correct? Because you're maintaining the same expense
Yeah.
ratio.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Follow-up question from there?
No.
Okay, we'll hear from you then, please.
So I have inspected this property a few times, and just to preface my descriptions as we went along, that this all comes from first-hand experience. I brought my information with me, I didn't leave it at home. I thought it was funny.
It's not bad.
Do you have your weather chart, Mr. LaFell?
No, but I'm now at the age, same as this building, where it gets cold and my bones are hurt, so. Okay, the big problem with this building, page 2, there's two big problems with the building. First is, if you look at page 2, is the donut style. So what we have is an awful lot of exposure to the exterior, inside the courtyard, all around. This is probably 40% greater exposure to the weather than any other building, which means that the windows mean very little as far as thermal efficiency. It's being lost out of all the space that's exposed on the side. The second problem with this property is the parking, which is underground and not heated. And it's actually worse to be unheated than it is to be heated because your freeze-thaw cycles happen. So on my inspections of the site, at all times, there was major work happening in the basement. And one part of the basement was in the parking level on page 7. I've got the good part of the building, but there's one whole part of it where, because the level goes underneath all the building, including the courtyard, is just rubble under there and they don't use it. It's the freeze thaw, so it degenerates it does things differently than a heated structure. A heated structure, you'll have melting, and then you'll have water, and water doing its bad stuff along with whatever chemicals are in melting the snow that you pick up in the city. In an unheated building, a parking structure like this, it's the freeze-thaw cycle, because you'll get warm in the daytime or different days, and then you freeze, and then you crack your cement off. And the building is impacted heavily by that. And that's why we were looking at higher cap rates for that, and also the higher risk of major changes due to temperature. As you can see, you saw the assessor's workup, how the utility costs are going up and down. Well, it's because it's more susceptible to the weather. So if you're an investor here and you're looking at this building, you're not going to budget for the best year, because then you're gonna lose your money. You're going to average it out and go above average because you're more susceptible. And the same issue with the elevators. When I was there, one of the elevators wasn't working, and another one was. And it's been having major elevator problems. There's nothing to suggest that they've been repaired. It's what they are and what they're going to have to spend. So the NOI, as we calculated it out, is oftentimes we'll use the last year of expenses, but we've had major ups and downs in it, and it isn't renovation based. It's just the experiences of the building. You can see the workup on page 1 showing the lowest the vacancy has ever been is 3.2, the highest is 20% in 2016. In cases like this, you know, we've probably all seen the television show with the broken elevator. Maybe in Los Angeles, those things still rent, not so much in Winnipeg. So we averaged out the income rather than took the last year. And generally I would average it out because income tends to go up, but not in this building. And the difference between the registered rent and the actual paid rent is basically it's an RTB registration. So they have registered 987 with RTB, but they're not making 987. So that, and then of course the results of the vacancy. Expenses, we average out, bad years, good years. This last 2 years have been a vast improvement. When we were before the board a few years, 2 years ago, the average was much higher because they'd had 2 bad years in there. One expense a year in 2013 was $595,000. So this isn't a question of fixing it once and everything works again. This is just keep fixing it. So the NOI is on that day, calculated on that basis at $332,000. And I didn't prepare this workup. I've inspected the building. I probably would have capped this thing in the 7s. Well, on a regular appraisal, simply because of the risk level. And it would depend on how you dealt with the expenses. We don't want to be misleading, because if you view the expenses very pessimistically, you can put in a lower cap rate. If you're overly optimistic, well, you haven't done a proper appraisal for one. If you average it, you're going to have to have an above average cap rate, because averaging on this is a high risk load. So in my mind, if I was looking at 6 as being a good apartment rate, I would go, I would average these costs out, which we did, and then bump another half point to a full point higher, because averaging doesn't insulate the investor from massive changes that have happened in the site. Thank you. That's my very brief.
Thank you.
I have a lot more.
Mr. Brogus, questions for the applicant?
So do you know how much rental discount there was?
Well, the rental discount, like I said, I only have the registration and then the income, and part of it is the discount, and part of it is actual rent. When I inspected it, we had lots of empty suites to look at, so the hard number I don't have.
Okay, so and then determining the vacancy rate, how was that done?
The vacancy rate is the differential between the registered and the actual. So some of it could include the difference in the registration, some of it is due to physical vacancy.
Okay, and would some of that be discount too?
Well, that's what I said, yeah.
Okay.
It would be a mix. On my last inspection, which was 2 years ago, I think we were clipping along double digits for vacancy, physical.
In 13 and 14, we see vacancy that's more typical.
No, not really, that's still higher than typical because those years were much better for vacancy, like CMHC numbers for buildings like this. Sometimes, a building like this in Portage Avenue should be more competitive than this. I've seen some buildings that were at 0, but I think 2% is on the high side. And the reason we can say that with some certainty is because we have 89 units, right? So if you have a 6-suite or something, you have one vacancy for 1 month, you can blow your vacancy right there. It's 4% right there. But with 89 units, you should have more stability, and because really what you could have is 1 unit vacant all year and still be around 1%. So it's high. It's always been high.
So for 15, the expenses are a lot higher than in 16 and 17. And were there any, to your knowledge, were there any capital expenditures, like were they redoing kitchens and they weren't able to get people in there?
No,
And they,
that was the garage repair.
okay. So any idea why it seemed to have peaked in 2016, and then, like, it's just such a striking difference from the previous
Well,
years?
because he had a very large expense category with the years, and I mean, I'm looking at your workup on 16 and 17. Basically, I think we have the same data, and we had 2 major issues, repair issues to deal with, which 1 year was the elevator and 1 year was the garage, the basement underground parking.
Do you know what the vacancy rate is currently?
Well, that one I didn't bring with me, I left it at home. I think we've got next year's mailer already, so
Okay.
sorry, I didn't have that here. It's in the computer at home.
Okay. And for income, isn't the most recent year typically used?
Yes, I said that, you're right, we would typically use it unless we had a problem building where, in this particular owner has 3 or 4 problem buildings where physical issues cause losses of income. So in most cases I would do that, maybe 5% of the time I wouldn't, and that's just based on personal knowledge. This building is not appropriate to use it because it's external issues causing it. They have another building, 239 Colony, where they have a boiler issue which causes them vacancies. In cases like that, I think the most prudent thing to do is average it out, and it'll be a moving average, of course, right? And we're fortunate to have about 15, 16 years of experience with their statements, so we know exactly which ones have this problem. I can tell you 510 Burnell, 2515 Portage, 239 Colony, and 697 Sherbrooke are their problem buildings where we wouldn't do it. And I might have missed one.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Newfield, you had, in your presentation here, you had mentioned that this is not your workup?
No, the cap rate selection wasn't mine. The workup is appropriate, and I've reviewed it, but I didn't select the 6.5. I think the people who did it hadn't seen the building, hadn't done an inspection. So it's a bit on the low side. I hadn't had a chance, as I mentioned, is to balance it out. I don't wanna be overly aggressive on expenses and then do the same with the cap. You do one or the other, and, it's within limits, but I would've gone 7. I did it last year, and I said,
So, for the panel members, are you sticking with the 6.5, or are you?
I think
changing it?
we'll leave it that way. I think we've, you know, I think it was a good question. It reminded me that we didn't, if we had taken last year's income, I probably would have gone to a higher cap rate. But I think averaging it out, we can afford to go down to 6.5.
Okay.
I was looking through my previous 10 years here, and we've always been looking at higher numbers. You've got a 7 year, a 7, and higher.
So, do I assume that, in looking at your expenses here, the applicable vacancy rates are in the expense?
Yes, they've already been considered, not in the expenses, but on just the lower income. You know, I don't have the number here, so I'm only doing an estimate, but the registration at 987 versus the actual is, like I said, it's partially a registration, so probably the actual cash potential income is a bit over 900,000. So probably around 910, and the rest is registration. So the difference is about a 6% actual market vacancy.
I thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
And you've said that this building has not been renovated at all?
It's had work done on it as you go along, so when something breaks or something has to be done, this property owner tends to go do a little bit more work than just merely repair, but it's not considered capital.
And if I understood you correctly, then you're saying it was a broken elevator that caused the vacancy to spike? Not
No, it's
renovation?
just been a variety of issues in the building. It's not, it's a difficult building to maintain, and so what would happen would be, say when they have a vacancy and they're gonna put the unit back on the market, with many buildings, they call up a guy and comes in and cleans the carpet and puts some paint on, and you get it ready the next day. So what happens in this building is when they have a vacancy, usually units shut down for about a month to review everything and fix the deferred maintenance issues. And that's really where it's happening, is on the turnover. It's just a longer turnover from unit to unit.
Okay, thank you.
I think you kind of explained it with your selection order, or I guess your agreement with the 6.5% cap rate, but when you're averaging your revenue and your expenses, and your revenue average is lower than 2 out of the 3 years, and your expenses are higher than 2 out of the 3 years, does that seem like a normal thing? Like if you were to look at 5 years?
Right. Well, that's why I brought up the topic earlier, because we were fortunate to have many, many years here. And in backing up a couple of years, I'm just going to read back to you. 2014, expenses were $461,000. 2013, $595,000. And where did I put 12? Sorry, somebody put my stuff all upside down.
Well, that would give us the 5 anyway.
Yeah, I mean-
13 and 14. Do you have the revenue as well?
Well, the revenue too, I mean, I just glanced here, for example, 2005, the expenses were 522,006, 484,000. So they're saying a decade earlier, they were consistent with what we're at right now. And when you take into account inflation, they were actually extremely high in previous years. So it's not, anybody who looks at this is not going to say we fixed the problem. They're just gonna say it is what it is. We can average this thing out 10 years, 5 years, we're still gonna get a number close to 500,000 a year. And sorry, what was your other question? Oh, the revenue.
Same thing on the revenue.
Yeah, the revenue, well, I'm going backwards in time here. So 845, 793, 820, now in 14 it was 813. 13 it was 799, I'm missing 12. 11 is 760. So we've had some ups and downs. 14 was, the big down was 16. But in previous years, from 10 to 11, the income dropped.
Okay, thank you. Just my only question, Mr. Brokus, desire for summation on this? Mr. Newfeld? Or summation for the 2 properties?
Well, yeah, I think that what they have in common is a 60-year-old construction with somebody's concept that indoor parking was a great idea, but wasn't designed to last 60 years. And that's unfortunate. Those of us who are aging and wonder what's going to break on ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you for presentations. You'll receive the orders in due course. We're going to take a 10-minute break here, and then we'll hear from Mr. Stone. Okay, I'll call the hearing back to order. I'll have you swear the applicant in, please.
Do you swear in or affirm?
Swear.
Could you please state your name?
Jared Story?
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. The assessor is still sworn in. Morning, Mr. Story. Thank you for being patient with us. You're representing the owners of 6 properties today,
That's correct.
and it's the amount of the assessed value that we're dealing with only?
That is correct.
Thank you. I'm just gonna deal with these properties as they're listed on the docket today. So the first property we'll deal with is 155 Trail Avenue. When you're ready, Mr. Assessor, we'll hear from you, please.
File number 19-2503, roll number 0706181, 3155 Trail, roll year 2020, April 1/18, assessed value $2,379,000. Building at the corner of Portage and Trail. 3 stories, 1959, we don't have an effective year built on it. 31 suites, 30 outdoor parking spots, construction class C masonry barn walls. You'll see on page 2, you've got the request for income information. They've been handing in their mailers. There's some recent subject sale history on this property. September 16, 2016, got a sworn value of $2.514 million. On it. Page 3 is our model income value summary. 31 suites are divided fairly evenly, 15 1-bedroom, 16 2-bedroom. They're modeled $748.19 5% rent, and our model parameters, including prop for each area and size, 2,379,000. If you go to page 4, you'll see our comparables. Property is at the corner of Trail and Portage, so we've got 3 Portage properties here as well. Thomas Bracket, the subject property, and are similar in suite composition. Bracket in terms of effective year build, similar in terms of suite count, average monthly rent per unit as well. So page 4A and 5, that's our cap rate evidence. We talked about it last hearing, so I won't belabor it again. We've got our mailer following, looks like I didn't number these ones unfortunately, so I apologize for that. Following page 6, we've got, starting with our mailer, that's the 2017 mailer. You'll notice right at the bottom of it, it says the suites were gutted. So it had a significant amount of renovations. There was suite work, they did major expenditures. The roof, mechanical, flooring, suite reno in terms of carpentry. They did $375,701 in terms of suite renovations, so it sounds like this property would require an inspection based on the fact that we don't have an effective age placed on it. So if you continue flipping, you'll see an ad. It says the building was totally renovated. I don't have page numbers, I apologize. The building was totally renovated in 2017. That's consistent with what we're seeing in their reported income report. Gridded windows, kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, lighting, lots of ceramics, double kitchen sinks in most units. And then at the end of my brief, we've got some pictures from the website, so you can see what I'm talking about is that they did do work to this place. So what I'm saying is this place would need an inspection. The effective age would probably be placed on it based on what they're advertising they did. So without any inspection, and the fact that the income and expense mailer indicates that the suites are gutted, it looks like they've done a lot of improvements, therefore I didn't adjust our assessment on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions for the assessor?
Yes, thank you. Have you visited this property?
No.
Have you visited any of the properties on this docket today? Okay, now, of all the properties on the docket, including the Colliers properties, do you realize that every property but one has a 5.3% cap on it?
I'll take your word for it.
Does that seem odd to you?
Well, if you look at the addresses, they're all down in the same corner of the city. They're all majority 2,000 numbered properties on Portage.
So locationally, they're similar.
Yeah, I believe they're built around the same time too.
Okay, so here we have, this is the 2300 block of Portage, this one's called Hilton House, 3-story low-rise walk-up. Now, we're built in 1959, and the effective age is 1959, so the building is considered original for its vintage.
That's what we have on our records, but based on my research, that's not the case.
Okay, but there have been some cosmetic improvements. So we've advertised ceramics, we've got plank vinyl flooring. You can see in the photos, these are cosmetic upgrades, correct?
Well, I mean, when I'm looking at the mail, it says the suites were gutted. And they did foundation work as well. They did plumbing replacement of 156,000. They did the roof for 148, so they're definitely did the foundation. There's more than just cosmetic on this
Okay,
one.
but the effective age is 59, it was built in 59, and that's the bones of the building for all intents and purposes are from 1959. Okay, do you know what the 2018 assessment was for this property?
The 18 assessment?
Yeah.
Let's take a look. The 2018 assessment was 1,721,000.
Okay, so 1.7 million,
Yeah.
and the proposed 2020 assessment is almost 2.4 million, correct?
Yeah.
And can you tell us what sort of increase is that year over year?
Sure. Let's see, 2379. Uh, 38%.
Okay, so that's almost 40%. Was that, would you consider that typical?
No.
Okay. Now, I noticed in your brief, you've got a sales history. We've got a sale right after the last, I guess actually within the last reference period. And the sworn value was $2.5 million, but the consideration was $628,000, correct?
That's what's indicated, yes.
Okay, do you have any details about what would happen there? Property transacted at $628,000, so I'm just wondering if you.
I think he's just reading his notes,
Sorry.
Mr. Stewart.
Got the sales verification from September 2016. What we have is purchase of partners' interest by remaining partners.
So it's a share sale?
It looks like, yeah, they're buying each other out, and
Okay.
this was not, this is an example of a sale we would not use in our model.
Okay, so that sale didn't affect the 40% increase. That's not what gave rise to this steep increase.
No, that was back in 2016.
Okay. Okay, okay, so, just keep going through here. Now, okay, so let's look at your cap rates. On page 4, this is an argument that I would appreciate if we could carry this forward for all the properties on the docket.
So,
You're aware that 3 of those 4 sales were purchased with the intention to renovate? The first 3.
The first 3. Yeah, they probably, well, I mean, maybe they did buy them to fix them up.
Okay. And I've a cap rate rebuttal evidence here to hand out. So the only, for discussion purposes today, the only one that we're gonna look at is 333 Ward. Now, the other issue here is that Mr. Neufeld said today that that cap rate is actually 5.5. Altus has said it's 5.13, and I worked on that file when it transacted, and it was 5.45, and that's also in our cap rate study. So, are you suggesting that 333 Ward is superior, inferior, or equivalent to 155 Trail Avenue?
Superior in what way?
In terms of location, in terms of amenities, in terms of parking, in terms of suite mix?
Like me personally, like where I would rather live?
No, what the market would.
The market?
View these, yeah.
Well, they're definitely different. I mean, we've got one building that was built in 2006 in a different corner of the city.
Right.
I mean, they're different areas. It depends on where you want to live, you know, what kind of finish you want. If you're looking at the pictures, at the end of my brief, I mean, though it was built in 59, it's definitely not 59 on the inside. So if we're looking at just the interior finish, they're probably comparable.
Do you think the interior finish is comparable to 333 Ward?
Well, just in terms of how new it would be.
Okay, I would suggest that that's inaccurate. Now, what do you suppose the effective economic useful life of an apartment building is?
Without fixing it, like just like
Just in
buying it
general.
and then just letting it fall to the ground. I don't know.
Well, what does the market see as the effective economic life of an apartment building?
I think that varies based on construction type, construction quality. What did Marshall and Swift say, 65 years?
So about, 60
Just
years. something like
what
that.
Marshall and Swift is saying, that's.
Okay, so
I've
this
seen those
building,
numbers.
our building would be close to the end of its useful economic life, would it not?
If it didn't have improvements, it looks like they declared themselves, they gutted, and they were working on the mechanical, the foundation, and the roof. So to say that it's near the end of its economic life would be inaccurate.
Would you say that costs of ownership will ramp up near the end of the effective useful economic life of an asset like this? Costs more to own it at the end, does it not?
Can you maybe elaborate on that question more? Like,
Sure. I think that as an asset nears the end of its effective useful economic life, the costs to maintain and own that asset ramp up, they increase. Would you not agree with
it
that?
depends on like, yeah, how you're maintaining it. Some people do nothing, some people like this
If you were to
property.
maintain it to a reasonable standard.
Well, yeah, things, building components, wear out over time and tenant use.
Right, I agree. Okay, so really, we're really only talking about the cap rate here. So another issue that makes the cap rate being the numerical expression of risk, one of the parts that makes that up is the durability of the income stream, correct?
That'd be something that would be considered by a potential purchaser.
Okay, so are you aware that in this area, these about 2.5 kilometers, I projected out, it's from Overdale, which is Sergeant Sunday, up to Moray, which is the Keg. We have about 30 different apartment buildings that are all competing for the same tenants. Would you say that that increased competition should be reflected in the cap rate, or would it be considered by a prudent purchaser?
I think it shows on like demand for the area. Like you got Assiniboine Park, right across from Sergeant Sunday. Yeah,
These are building 50s though, a lot of them, right?
yeah, I mean, Asteroid owns this place. They've been in the game a while, they know what they're doing. If they thought this wasn't a good idea to pour hundreds of thousands of dollars into.
I'm not saying it's not a good idea, I'm asking if the next potential purchaser was looking at the apartment universe in this 2.5 kilometers of Portage Avenue, would they see that competition as a risk to their, the durability of their income stream?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay. So you don't think that given the age, the class, the condition, the competition, and again, the durability of the income stream, that this property ought to see an adjustment to the cap rate?
No, definitely not. I mean, it's been renovated. Anyone who's buying this place is gonna see that it's been recently renovated and there's a level of risk that's been removed from it, so.
You do see the rents that they're achieving, correct? Now, are
That
those
is-
rents, are those rents below the CMHC average or above it?
Well, I do know what 2018 rents are, and they're significantly higher than the 2017 rents, which leads me to believe they probably got an RTP increase.
Okay, but that's not what we're talking about.
Well, we're talking about the current condition of the property.
Current physical condition.
Current physical condition,
Right.
yes.
So
Which,
plank vinyl flooring, ceramic tiles on the kitchen and the bathroom,
Mhm.
that's effectively what we're talking about.
it seems like it's good enough for them to get an increase over rent control.
Okay, all right, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
And Mr. Varakis, the average increase for apartment buildings generally from from the last assessment, do you have that figure handy or anything like that?
No, but it's not 40%.
Okay, okay. have further questions, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Ms. McFedge?
I don't have any questions.
I don't want to dwell on that, but the 1.7 in an 18, was that a board decision? Or?
Yeah, so it went to the board, and then we're looking at, for the 2018, we're looking April 1st, 2016.
No, I understand, and so my question was that a board decision?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, you're talking about all this renovation, and it's because of the website and because of the mailer.
Yeah,
Are there permits on this property? Would there not have to be?
you would think so. For whatever reason, they're not in my brief. But based on the level of work they did, as they're declaring in terms of like mechanical work, there should be permits.
And the permits would trigger an inspection?
Yeah, like this place definitely needs to be inspected. Like if you're just talking about like the 40% increase, this mailer here is for 2017, and we wouldn't have known about the renovations at the time of the 2018 border revision. So I think just looking at it as, looking at the 40% and saying, oh, that's too much, that 2018 assessment doesn't reflect the current condition of the property.
Right, the 2018 assessment that's placed on here is
Right.
model-driven,
Yeah, for 18,
or sorry, 2020,
yeah, that's model.
that's model-driven. Okay, I thank you. Mr. Story, letter from you, please.
Thank you. Okay. So 155 Trail Avenue. We are looking at a 3.5-story structure, so it's 3 stories plus the basement. We're located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Portage and Trail Avenue in the Silver Heights area. The improvement was built in 1959. It's presently being used as a multifamily residential building. Total gross floor area is approximately 26,000 square feet. And the subject property has 15 one-bedroom suites and 16 two-bedroom suites for a total of 31 suites. There are 20 outdoor parking stalls on the site. The site is rectangular in shape, and the site size, according to the City of Winnipeg Property Taxation Department records, is approximately 23,279 square feet and zoned RMFL. So, now we've taken the actuals. If you come with me to page 6, please. We've stabilized the expenses in a stabilized column. And what we're doing is we're, the assessor's done this with other properties as well. It's the same basic methodology. We'll take 3 years of income and expense statements. We'll try to stabilize them into what we'll call a typical year, or how a potential purchaser might look at this asset in terms of how it's performing in terms of incomes and expenses. So we're very close on the EG, or we're dead on the EGI, but we differ on the income and, or on the repair and maintenance ratio. The assessor has used the model generated rate of 53.5. You see the actuals are 55.6. But the material difference here comes with the cap rate. We have applied a cap rate of 6%, as opposed to the assessor's 5.3. Now, if you flip back for one moment, please, page 5, you'll see that I've included the summary of our cap rate table, and I believe you all have a copy of our Altus 2020 cap rate study. And you'll see that for properties of this vintage, I've adjusted it based on the fact that there is some work done. I've said that it's more typical that it would fall within the range of the 1960 to 1979 vintage, giving us a cap rate of 6%. So the resulting market value, when we capitalize the NOI of $120,333 with a 6% cap rate, we come to $2,005,547, rounded to our requested amended value of $2,006,000 for the 2020 realty assessment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's not what's on page 7.
I'm sorry?
Page 7, your summary, sorry.
Oh, page 7.
You're reducing to 2,147,000.
Sorry. Nope, that's an error. That's before the cap rate change. Nope, the requested value is, just double check. Apologies. No, it is $2,005,000.
So 2,006,000.
6,000.
Okay, all right.
2,006,000.
Thank you.
2,006,000.
Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt, I just wanted to
Thank you.
clarify.
I appreciate it.
You went any further.
So, page 1 was 2,005,000.
Yeah, it should be rounded up to 2,006,000.
56?
Yeah,
So they're all 2,006,000.
that's correct, yeah.
Sorry. A sequence there, sorry.
Right.
And then Mr. Brooks,
Okay.
questions for the applicants?
Well, I have some cap rate rebuttal. Can I hand that over?
Rebutting
His cap rates?
that are included in his,
Cap rate chart.
okay. Could you show that to Mr. Story, please?
Yeah, there's
So this cap rate chart is
Yep.
what you're.
Well, he's got his cap rate
She
study.
got the full cap rate study.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. So again, just for cap rate, like this, asks this to be applied to all the properties on the docket, because we're gonna be talking about cap. Okay, so for 210 St. Mary's, that's the first sales mailer we're looking at. And also this is page 3 of their cap rate study. They have claimed a 6 1/4 cap rate. If you go to page 5, the highlighted section, line 32 shows that the property was, the purchase price was based on the property's net operating income, and the cap rate in which they assumed was 5.5%.
So is that a question?
No, I'm just
This
giving
is his
rebuttal.
rebuttal to your cap rate study.
Okay.
And then on beach, if you go to page 7, you'll see highlighted line 32, it was based on the net operating income. And they assumed a 4.5 cap rate. Altus calculated that at 5.42. So this is just evidence to simply illustrate from the purchaser. These are sales mailers. So the purchaser told us what cap rate they bought the property for. And it looks like 3/4 of a point less than what Altus is saying on these properties.
So you have an opportunity to address that, Mr.
Yeah,
Story?
and who submitted these mailers?
The purchasers,
The purchaser, their agent, or
the purchaser.
the actual purchaser? Okay. But you haven't provided any computations as to how we've come to this. We've just written out a number in the box, but there's no background information, there's no calculations.
Yeah, these are their mailers. I haven't put a hand to these. I'm just handing them over.
Okay. That doesn't mean much to me without any calculations, but, okay. So purchase price based on that operating income, okay. Yeah, again, without any supporting documents, it's hard to speak to this.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, did you have any questions on this rebuttal evidence?
No, sir.
Ms. McFadden?
I do not.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just go with questions.
Okay.
Now, just staying on the cap rate. So, when I look at these properties, and you guys have provided pro formas, the repair and maintenance range from 332 a suite for 210 St. Mary's up to $1,072 a suite R&M for the 333 ward. That represents the high and the low, correct?
Sure, yep.
Okay, and so the other property, which is above 1,000, is 403 St. Anne's, and every other property is $750 per unit or below for the R&M. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah.
So, in your opinion, does this represent normal per unit, the normal per unit range on a suite basis for repair and maintenance?
Does, what range? All of the ranges that are, these are actuals, right?
Most of them are $750 to $332 per unit R&M.
Right,
Is
do we
this?
know what the previous year was, or what the maintenance plan was for any of these?
Well,
I mean,
what I'm asking-
You're isolating one variable, which is effectively meaningless outside of the context of the larger schedule.
That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you whether or not $332 to $750 is a reasonable per unit
No,
amount.
it's just those are extremely low, would you not say? $300 per suite is pretty low for our number.
Most definitely,
Yeah,
most definitely.
yeah.
So, would a purchaser, could there be some deferred maintenance involved in these suites, given that they're
Would
repair
there
and
be
maintenance?
deferred maintenance?
Yeah, given that you've shown that
Are you
they're,
talking about CapEx, or are you talking about?
I'm talking
deferred
about
maintenance?
whether the deferred maintenance.
But that would be CapEx, right? We're talking.
No, whether the place is worn out and it's not being taken care of.
Okay, but by definition, deferred maintenance isn't like changing carpets and flooring, right? It would be mostly dedicated towards capital improvements like the roof, the windows, the envelope of the building, or the foundation, correct?
Are these properties being maintained at this level of R&M per unit?
Oh, so you're suggesting that because the R&M is low, that somehow the buildings are in poor condition?
That's
I
what
would suggest that they're
I'm,
not.
that's what I'm asking you.
No, they're being maintained to a standard, to be certain.
To a
A
standard?
standard that would be appropriate for the market that they're not vacant, right?
So, you mentioned before that you thought that it was quite low. Given that it's quite low, you're saying the suites are of below average quality?
No, I'm saying that what you're doing is you're taking the R&M for 1 year, and you're saying that's not a stabilized R&M over the useful life of the asset, right?
Well, I'm just taking what you guys stabilized at and.
Right, I'd have to look at the last 2 or 3 years, the horizon going forward to see what the plan was. But no, $300 per unit would be low.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, so, given the rebuttal evidence I just gave and how NOI is calculated based on the sale price they gave for 210 St. Mary's, could it be possible that the purchaser looked at the $332 per unit R&M and said, that's too low, we're assuming that we're gonna have to spend more per unit on these properties, and thus declared 5.5 cap for their purchase
So
consideration?
we're talking about St. Mary's?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. No, I think 6 1/4 on the cap for a property built in 1952 is wholly appropriate. Do you not?
No, I don't agree.
Do you think-
That's what we're talking about.
Rather than have a
From the
discussion
city's
here.
perspective, from the city's perspective, everything built from 1946 to 1974 is a 5.3 cap, correct?
No,
But everything we're hearing today is a 5.3 cap, regardless of any individual factor, right?
that's not answering my question.
I'm asking you though.
That's my question.
But he's asking me a question, Mr. Starr.
No, I think that cap rate is appropriate.
Okay. So do you think they'd continue to operate it at $332 per
No, I
unit?
don't think that they're spending $332 per suite for time immemorial going forward. I don't believe that.
So if they spent, like, you stabilized this one at $1,400 per suite, and I think they're roughly around the same age, would that have an effect on the cap rate if that's what the purchaser of 210 St. Mary's was assuming?
You're comparing apples and oranges here. You're saying that if, sorry, repeat that question for me?
Okay, because you stabilized at 44,000 per unit, and you took 2013, which,
Sorry,
I-
44,000 per unit?
yeah, I haven't got to his property yet, but you stabilized this one at, 44,000 per year, which is 1440 per unit.
Right. I see what's happening.
That's
here.
more typical, would you
Right,
agree
okay, so
on?
what you've done here is you've highlighted those 2 years to come to that 332. But as I was mentioning, in the pro forma that was used to purchase this property, they assumed 8,800 as a typical year's R&M. So that's, so your 959, you got 1 year where we're spending 6,345, correct? And then the next year, we're spending 959. So when we average those two together, we end up with an extremely low R&M rate per suite.
Mhm.
But that's not what a purchaser's looking at when they're buying this property, right? They're looking at that 8,800, which leads us to that 6.26 cap.
But you didn't use the 8,800, you used the average.
No, we use the pro forma. You can see it, it's the pro forma line. That's what we use.
Now, it says here you stabilized at 3,652 for the 6 1/4. The pro forma is actually a 5 1/4
Okay.
cap on page 6.
Yeah, no, I think that that's being driven down by that 1 year, 959. Clearly, that's not appropriate.
Okay. So for Ward,
Yeah.
that's on page 12.
Okay.
We've got a 5.13 cap, so
Correct.
looking at page 25, you've got waste and snow, and you took the most recent year. Is that not a line that's
Sorry, are we looking at page 12 or page 25?
12?
Okay, yeah.
Line
Line
25.
Oh, line 25.
Looks like you took the most average of the waste and snow. Should that, the most recent, should that line not be averaged, given the
Well, I
weather?
think that's what we would call a new normal. That would be around the time when the owner took it over, I believe. So I don't think it would be appropriate to add $30,000 for waste and snow removal.
Are the rest of the properties on this docket, do they use the average for, do you guys stabilize using the average or the most recent?
For waste and snow?
Yeah. I guess we'll just wait and see on that one.
Okay.
And then for,
You realize we're using the lowest year, right?
yeah,
And so that, do you think that helps your?
that affects the cap rate on a fixed sale price,
Okay.
for sure. Like if you recalculate using the average, the cap rate comes down to below 5.1,
So
it's
you're
like
suggesting
5.07.
that a purchaser would,
I'm saying based on your stabilization, if you use the average, the cap rate would drop.
okay, we're looking at what a prudent, right-thinking purchaser would be most likely to budget. They're not gonna budget $30,000 for snow removal. I think they're using the 10,000 is totally appropriate. That'd be extremely high, would it not?
Well, typically they look at the history and then they average it. we'll see what you do.
You would try and smooth out any sort of anomalous years, right?
So you have high and low, and then you go, we'll see what you did on the next properties. So,
I'm assuming, Mr. Brokus, that these questions are going to follow through for
Yes.
the
yeah,
remainder of the properties?
okay, so for page 10, Laverandra for the repair and maintenance on line 27. You guys stabilize at 500 a suite, even though 2013 to 2016, we're showing much higher R&M. Can you maybe give us an idea about that?
No, I'm not sure why, that would appear low.
Okay,
Yeah. Check into that.
and then for Mighton on page 8, you have RVA. That, can you give us an idea how that was? Is that based on previous years, or how was that calculated?
Where are you looking at this?
Page 8, 155 Mighton.
Oh, RVA, so RVA is the valuation and advisory services, business unit of Altus. So this is from information that we have from them.
Okay, so it's not based on their reported actuals?
I believe it is. So RVA develops these rates and numbers, right?
Okay, so that's it for cap. On this property, you used, on page 6, you used 2013 repair and maintenance, 44,648, which is 1440 per suite. Why did you choose the 2013?
Well, as you said, there's substantial renovations. You can see that there's $330,000 worth of work that was done in 17. 15 and 16 were high as well. So we used the last typical year, which is 2013.
Okay, so 1440, that's more normal. What we'd see on a go-forward basis?
I would say that that would be more typical of the market, yeah.
So given the amount of repair and maintenance in 2017, looking at current condition, did they receive an RTB exemption on this property?
I'm not sure, but I know that if they did, it would be non-binding anyway, because they're not achieving, they wouldn't be achieving the rents that would be above the RTB, correct?
Okay. Do you think the R&M per unit would be lower perhaps than the 44,000, given that it was unrenovated prior to that, and now that it's been renovated, perhaps that number could be a bit high?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Line 27,
Yeah.
you've got 1440 per unit on the R&M using the pre-renovation lowest number.
Right.
Do you think that now that's had a whole bunch of renovations onto it, that 1440 might drop?
Potentially, but we're not really that far apart on our NOI, are we? We're talking about cap rate. And I think that given the amount of competition in this area, this is not, this is a war of attrition. These owners have to spend a great deal to remain competitive in this market, or else their vacancy goes sky high. So, we're not really arguing the NOI, we're arguing the cap rate on this property.
Just one last question.
Yeah.
2015, 2016 showed 1.8, 1.5 vacancy. Does that not show that there's high demand for this property in this area?
It would show that I think the rents were fairly low, and that, I think a lot of time what we're seeing is, in the last cycle, vacancy was low, but so were rents. Now we're seeing that vacancy is high because rents are higher, so there's always a push and pull between finding that market equilibrium between vacancy and the optimal rent, right? So, and keep in mind too, when we're looking at this 2.6, we're stabilizing over the economic life of the asset, which is likely pretty low, because there are gonna be ups and downs, and I would suggest that unless rents go down in this building over time, or if they spend a great deal of money to renovate it, then they're gonna see increased vacancy. It's just the reality of owning an apartment block, especially in a competitive landscape.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think based on the thoroughness of the assessor's examination, I don't think I have any further questions. Thank you.
I don't either.
I have no questions, thank you. Desire for summation, either party, or perhaps leave it till the end and make a general summation?
The main point here is that a 40% year-over-year increase, I believe, is inappropriate with this property.
Go into the washroom real quick.
I'm sorry?
Go into the washroom real quick.
Certainly, we'll take a 5-minute break. Call the meeting and hearing back to order. Next property,
Bless you.
bless you. Next property we'll deal with is 2235 Portage. When you're ready, we'll hear from you, please, Mr. Assessor.
Okay, file number 19-3333, roll number 0706219600. April 1st, 18 reference date, 2020 roll year, 18,393,000 assessed value. As per the model, it's an apartment. It's 5 buildings. Actual year built 1952, effective year built 1974, 136 suites, 81 outdoor parking spots, construction class C masonry barn walls. They've returned the mailers. On page 2 you'll see in the most recent sales in 2006, was like over $1 sale, so I wouldn't put any weight on that sworn value. 136 suites divided up evenly. Model parameters generated in 18,393,000. Estimated market value on page 4, you'll see our rent comps, whereby our rent looks to be at the upper end of the range. Here, effective year build 1974 is bracketed. But these buildings are 1 and 2 bedroom units. So on page 5, what you'll see is I had the opportunity on this one to do an analysis on the mailers, and what you'll see is that there's some colors here. So I looked at their actual income, their stated rent, and then you remove discounts, and then you add other factors like parking and laundry is $1547. The model is a lot higher than that. That gross potential of 1819. That simply just isn't what they're actually getting. So looking at my stabilized numbers here, I took their actual income, 1547, which is pretty much exactly what the applicant has here. So I'm running my stabilized numbers using the 5.3 cap, comes out to 16 million. Would be 308 rounded. So that's going to be my recommendation.
Okay.
There's just too big of a difference between what the model's saying, and it should be adjusted in fairness. Now, you'll.
I'm sorry, so your recommendation on this property is
16,308.
16,308?
16,308, yes.
Thank you, please continue.
And so, stabilized, how it's usually done. However, water, you'll notice there is a big difference between 2016 and 2017. The water more than doubled. That seems really odd. It looks like in 2015, which I did not have access to, just looking at the applicant's brief, the water was 66,618. So I didn't know what was going on there, so I just took the average of those 2 years. I don't know if there's a change in who pays for what, but I felt that that really stood out to me. But still, I didn't totally discount the fact that the water bill was higher, so I took the average, and the average was 105,622. And then for property tax, on their 2017 mailer, they reported the wrong property tax. You can see my page 20 shows the 2017 tax bill, and I got my number from there. And so I used that, that's the most recent, and the applicant did so correctly as well in that row. So my recommendation, using the model cap, 60,308,000 rounded. The remainder of my report is just the cap rate charts, and you'll see page 14. You'll see pictures, some interior pictures of the place. It's has some work done to it. There was a permit. Page 18 in 2008. I think that says 4 million, if I can count the zeros correctly. Exterior and interior alterations, upgrades to all suites, new windows and mechanicals. So that would be where the effective age comes in. On the back side of that one. Yeah. Okay, so they did a bunch of work, but still, the rent the model is putting us too high. 16,308,000 rounded is my rec. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, question for the assessor?
Thank you. And thank you for that. So I suppose we're only disputing the cap rate here. So this building was built in 1952. Now, are you aware that this is lift slab construction?
I didn't inspect the property.
Okay, it's extremely rare. It was only the 4th building in Canada to use this technique in the early 1950s, and they don't tend to use it anymore. Now, the reason I ask is because, my question is, does the construction class affect the cap rate?
No,
The construction class doesn't affect the cap rate?
no.
Okay, but in the income producing properties valuation manual the city puts out, it does say that construction class does affect the value, correct?
It doesn't make any changes in our model.
Okay, well then, I would suggest the valuation manual is incorrect, because it says that suite mix, parking, age, location, quality, and construction class.
I'm not producing any manual here today that claims that.
Okay. In your experience, then, would you say that D-class construction is a lower class than C-class construction?
Masonry compared to wood?
Well, that's
Stud frame?
right, but my point is that this isn't masonry. This is lift slab construction. Right? So I looked at the sister building, which is the Silver Heights Shopping Center, and you have that one listed as D-class construction. So what would give rise to that disparity? They're built at the exact same time by the exact same person with the exact same technique.
I wasn't around, I haven't inspected these properties, so I can't comment on the construction.
So I'm suggesting it should be Class D. Okay, so the department's using 5.3 cap rate, and again, we can look at Ward, which transacted at a 5.3 cap rate. Would you say that Ward is superior, inferior, or equivalent to this property?
Well, I would say that Ward transacted at like 5%, not 5.3.
We have it in our cap study, we have the owner saying that it transacted at 5.45. Okay, so your position is that an older building using an outdated construction method does not warrant a higher cap rate, it should just be 5.3.
It's done by age, area, and size in our model, and that's the cap rate that it gets.
Okay.
1974, if we had applied in 1975, it would have had a higher cap. Or sorry, a lower cap, rather.
Well, that's an interesting thing too. In the city's cap rates, there's a break between 1974 and 1975, correct?
Yeah.
And you're aware of the subsidy period in Manitoba, or across Canada. Most of the apartments in Canada were built between 1971 and 1980, right?
I don't have those statistics.
That's just a known thing. That's called the subsidy era. That's when there were federal programs that were incentivizing people to build apartment blocks. So I would suggest that there's not a material difference between 74 and 75. But you're applying a cap rate based on the fact that this building is effectively a 1974 vintage?
Yeah, that's the cap rate. Yeah.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Borosic, I guess, in this case, you know, I guess when you come here, you do these presentations, and I'm just looking at your page 3, and it's like 18 million free, and then, you know, then you present some other information, and it drops considerably. It's like $2 million. So, I mean, I don't quite understand why you would, you know, you would do one presentation and then change to another. You know, it just seems like you come here and you should be prepared to defend the position, you know, of the city. And then I'm glad to see you change, but I mean, you should have it right the first time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of properties in the city of
Yeah.
Winnipeg, and
Yeah.
it is done on a mass appraisal basis.
Yeah.
But it would be disingenuous to the ratepayer for me to try and defend valuations which, in my opinion, are too high.
Yes, I know, like, you're super busy, and it's well, you do the best job you can, I guess, and, okay, we'll just leave it at such. Thank you.
Ms. McFadden?
I don't have any additional questions.
Just some clarification, maybe I missed it. Did you say that this property was inspected recently? I know you didn't, but is there a recent inspection?
No.
No? So the photos that are there are from the website?
Yeah, that would be taken from the internet.
And the permits are substantially older, from 2008.
Yeah, they're old. They're
So
like-
chances are it hasn't been inspected since 2008, 2009? Thank you.
May I ask a
A
question?
follow-up question?
Yeah, sorry. So when that permitted work happens and the effective age changes, does that effective age, is it sort of locked in time at 1974 now for all time until something else happens? Or are we capturing the fact that it's,
Continuing to get older?
Yeah.
Yeah, we capture the fact that it continues to get older in relation to the current year that we're
Okay.
looking at. Like, it's getting older.
Right.
It's not like we're making 74.
no,
and the
but so
one's
next year this will
75.
say 1973
No, it'll say 1974.
or 74, okay, so it is
But it'll
locked in
be-
time at 1974, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, we'll hear from you there, please.
thank you. Okay, 2235 Portage Avenue. Again, we have a building built in the early 1950s. Now we've got a 3-story structure, sorry, 2 3-story structures, and then 2 4-story structures. We're located on the north side of Portage between Conway to the east and Mount Royal Road to the west in the St. James and Assiniboine area. Again, there was a rehabilitation process of some sort that went forward in '08 and '09. The total gross floor area is approximately 115,189 square feet. And according to the city of Winnipeg, a varying age of 1974 has been applied. Subject property has 68 one-bedroom suites and 68 two-bedroom suites for a total of 136 suites. The site is somewhat irregular in shape, and the site size, according to the Winnipeg Assessment Department records, is approximately 2.1 acres, and it's zoned RMFL. Okay, so again, our main argument here is on the cap rate, and we've spoken this to great length here today. We are suggesting that a building of this vintage, now again, by our model, we would look at 6 1/4. But based on the current condition, based on the fact that there was work done 10 years ago, permitted work, we think a cap rate of 6% is appropriate. And so we are requesting a market value of $13,798,616, rounded to $13,799,000. And again, that's based on a 6% cap rate versus the assessor's 5.3. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barocas, questions for the applicant?
So the main difference we're looking at is cap, but there's also the water. We are different in terms of the NOI.
Yeah, I noticed that.
On
There's
page
a-
5,
Yeah, there's a big jump. Hold on.
so it's about, what, 40,000 roughly when you look at your NOI to my calculated NOI on page 5 based on my revised recommendation. That's where.
But you used 2 years where we've used 3, so did you get rid of that 1 year in order to?
I averaged both years,
Okay.
and so what I'm asking you is, when I look at what they declare,
Right.
in terms of what's paid for by the, what's included in the rent, nothing changes from 15 to 17, and I wonder, does not strike you as odd as the water goes up as much as it did?
Yes, it is very odd, and that's something that we noticed and we're looking into. I'm not sure, now our methodology is to use the most current year's utilities. That tends to be the most appropriate way to capture that, because utility bills are going up. Now, it being that high is concerning, and something that we have flagged and noted, and something that we will look into. But yes, you're correct, it is very high.
And my questions for cap, I asked to be rolled forward, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Yeah, I would really question the water. I think that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Elizabeth Batson?
I have no further questions. Oh, I do, sorry, I do have a further question. Okay,
Please proceed.
so according to the tax notice that we have in the city's evidence, the assessment of this building was 15 million 2 years ago. So you maintain that this building has dropped in value by $2 million?
No, I don't know that that value was appropriate to begin with. I'd have to see how they came to that assessment. But no, I don't think that the assessed value in this case is reflective of market value. And we've seen that the assessor didn't make a recommendation in the last cycle. And here, when we stabilize it, we see when we get away from the mass valuation modeling, we see how some of these properties can be over-assessed. So no, I don't think that trajectory is correct. I think that the last cycle should have been lower as well.
But it wasn't appealed, or it was?
I'm sure it was appealed, but I wasn't with the firm at that time, so I don't know the.
Okay, thank you.
the history.
I have no questions, thank you. Information on this particular one? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on. Next property we'll deal with is 2371 Portage. Are you ready, Mr. Assessor?
Yep. Okay, let's do a quick one. File number 19-3197, home number 0706 0754,02371 Portage Avenue, assessed value $2,232,000. Last go around, it was not appealed and it was assessed at $2,104,000. 1955 building with 10 years effective year variance, so we have an effective year bill of 1965, 24 suites, 14 outdoor parking spots, construction class D, wood or steel frame exterior walls. Our request for income information and sales history is on page 2. Our model evaluation is on page 3. Our comparables are on page 4 and are supportive. On page 5, I was able to do a workup on this one as well. When we're looking at the net operating incomes between the applicant and I, and just glancing ahead to their workup, we're less than $1,000 apart, so this is predominantly a cap rate issue for the interest of considering everyone's time here. The mailers are provided on page 8, 8 to the end of the report. I've got on page 23 picture that I was able to snag off the internet. It looks like they're declaring that 1 bedrooms have been renovated, large kitchen, stainless fridge. So there's been some work done which would explain the age variant. This is down at the end of the city we've been talking about this morning, and it is predominantly a cap rate issue. You've heard that so far, so I'm just gonna leave it there.
Thank you. Mr. Story, question for the
Yes, thank you.
assessor?
Okay, and I agree, it is predominantly a cap rate question here. So, and I'll ask you again, would you say the vintage of the property affects the potential purchaser's cap rate?
Yeah, age, area.
Okay. And we've established that a reasonable expectation for economic life for an apartment building is about 60 years.
Yeah, just
So we would consider.
left on its own, and yeah, that would be how long.
Okay, but this one, you've got an age variance from 55 to 65, so it's safe to say that this is an older building, correct?
Well, it's a 1955 building.
So that would be older. Now, we've got construction class D. Now, you're saying now that doesn't, the quality of construction doesn't affect the cap rate?
Well, I haven't said anything about the quality of construction. This is just indicating that what we have on record for this one is construction class D,
Okay, but that doesn't affect the,
not the cap,
do you
not
think a
the-
potential purchaser would be concerned with wood frame construction?
Well, it just depends on the condition they're in. There can be masonry buildings that are shifting and cracking, just, it's all condition.
We say that older wood frame buildings have moisture problems typically?
It could be.
Okay. And so, could you tell us what gave rise to that change in age variance from 55 to 65?
It was reviewed. It was basically just based on the internet ads. We had it too low. We looked on the internet and we saw that there's been updates. So in order to have a rental rate which is more reflective of what they're actually getting, which by comparing our calculations is
Sorry, so you're
Correct.
saying you went on the internet to see what they were?
Someone did, yeah, it was discovered that the place has been remodeled, so it's completely remodeled. Bathrooms, replaced countertops, updated appliances, so we adjusted it.
Okay, so we're using marketing language then? Like that's
Well-
advertising language, right?
The condition of the property.
No, when they say that, you know, you've got these wonderful floorboards or whatever, that's, when you say that you're using a listing, that's marketing, right?
Well, typically when people fix their property up, they like to advertise it,
Right.
show how nice it is.
Okay.
And so, based on the bump in effective age, which does affect the rent, looks like based on your evaluation and our model assessment, we're pretty close.
Right, I'm thinking about condition here, and I would imagine that, and again, I'll bring up the point about the competition, this is right next to 2391 Portage, correct?
I'll
Which is a newer building,
take your word for it.
competitive rates, more amenities. So do you think with this older stock, this pre-subsidy era multifamily, do you think that it becomes functionally obsolete more quickly? Do you think its obsolescence is accelerated based on the fact that there's new product in direct proximity to it competing for the same tenants? And do you think that equates to risk? That's what I'm getting at.
No, I've heard it been told here that that's a good investment opportunity, where you can buy a place and fix it up, raise the rents.
Okay, now, and I agree, we are close on our NOI, but just for the sake of interest, I noticed on your stabilized column, you come to an NOI of 123,499. I'm just wondering where you got that figure from, because the 15, 16, and 17 are all considerably lower. Your average is 99,000, and even if you kicked out that 72,000 outlier, where did that number come from?
The NOI calculation?
Yeah.
I stabilized, using market vacancy. I used 15 and 16 for the R&M, because 17 looked high. And then I used the average, waste and snow, I think you did too.
No, I see that, my question is the last line, the NOI line, in the stabilized column.
Oh, yeah, that should have been calculated from subtracting the income from the expenses.
Okay,
Expenses from income.
now, one thing I didn't get to when we talked about cap rates, would you classify this building as an A or a B?
I don't classify buildings by A and B.
Okay, now, all right, you have used CBRE and their info in your cap rates, and they do talk about A and B. So, they would indicate if this is a B, that the appropriate cap rate for these assets, and for most of these assets we're talking about today, would be between 5.75% and 6%, correct?
That's what they're indicating.
Okay. And they only include investment grade properties in their studies, correct?
I was not part of the CBRE study. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, that's fair. Thanks very much, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
I don't think I have any, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman? Just a clarification on this, there's no permits for this property?
I don't have any comments. We got the renovations from the internet, so it wasn't caught by permit, it was caught by research.
So you're not aware of when this work was done?
No, I'm not. But the note here is from May of 14, so at least by then.
Sometime prior to 14.
Yeah.
And just on your last page with the photo, when was this? What date was this photo?
Oh, that would have been a recent photo.
I'm sorry?
That would have been a photo I went and took a look. I was trying to get, that's all I could find on this property in terms of advertising.
So this rent would be post-reference?
Yeah, don't consider that,
So
right? I should have
we
flagged
should
it
have
up.
taken that out.
Don't put any weight on that, right? that's not right.
Right. Okay, thank you. Mr. Story?
Yep. Okay. Okay, 2371 Portage Avenue, to the Shaughnessy Apartments. We have a building age of 1955. The city's applied a variance to 1965, though there's been no permitted work. We have a suite mix of 18 one-bedroom suites and 6 two-bedroom suites. Now, we are located on the southeast corner of the intersection of Portage and Davidson in the Silver Heights area. The improvement is presently being used as a multifamily residential building. Total gross floor area is approximately 14,250 square feet. And again, we have 18 one-bedroom suites and 6 two-bedroom suites for a total of 24 suites. There are 11 outdoor parking stalls reported being on the site. So the site is rectangular in shape, and the site size, according to the assessment department records, is approximately 13,649 square feet and zone RMFL. Now, again, this is primarily a cap rate issue. So once again, we are assessing, or we are disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5.3%. Based on our study, we believe that a cap rate of 6% is more appropriate for an asset of this vintage. So by applying the resulting, the 6% cap rate to our NOI, we come to a indicated market value of $1,987,854, rounded to $1,988,000 for the 2020 assessment cycle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Brokus, questions for the applicant?
So I think we can agree that repair and maintenance is a big chunk of the expenses. Would you agree with that?
Repair and maintenance is a big chunk of the expense.
Just for apartments in general?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Okay, so, given that this property is stabilized at almost $1,700 R&M, and your cap rate sales, that 1,700 is more than double and triple in many cases the R&M. Would cap rate sales with higher R&Ms be more appropriate?
Would cap rate, say that again?
Cap rate sales with a stabilized higher R&M per unit be more reflective of what would be used by the purchaser to develop a purchase price for the property?
What we need to do is go through the apartment universe, look at sales within the reference period, and develop a stratified cap rate study. Okay, so I believe the 6% cap rate is wholly appropriate for a building of this vintage. I know what you're saying about about isolating out the R&M for 1 year, but I don't think that a 5.3 cap rate applied across the board for every pre-subsidy asset on Portage Avenue is appropriate. I think that's just wrong. I think that you're missing all the main factors here that an actual purchaser would look at, and the 6% cap rate is probably on the conservative side. So, no, I think 6% is a reasonable cap rate for this asset.
Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Story,
Yes.
excuse me. Is there a transposition between what you have on your sheet, on your page 6? You have for the gross income, 242, 533, and I'm just looking at what the applicant filled out for December 31, 17, 224, 568.
That's the effective gross rent, so that would be net of vacancy, bad debt and collection loss.
That is the effective? I thought that would be the potential.
No, the potential would be the, what could potentially be generated from that asset, and then the effective is what's actually generated after we account for vacancy and collection loss.
So where do you get the 242? 242,000,
So that's if
533.
if every suite was leased at the market rent, that's what theoretically this asset could potentially generate.
Because there's two figures here. I see on one sheet, there is the figure that you're using. Okay. That they signed off on April 28th, 2018. This one here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 242, 533, and that's what you're using.
No, I'm using that as the potential, that's,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the
okay.
potential.
So,
So once we subtract vacancy and collection loss, we come to the effective, and that's line 8 on my workout. Of course, those are stabilized based on averages.
yeah. But I thought when they complete the questionnaires, they give you all the gross figures.
They do.
No, you know, and so the gross is the potential,
No.
not the effective.
Sorry, okay, so let's look at this now. We're looking at the.
Well, we're looking at two figures, so I'm just trying to
I
sort
see.
it out.
Right, okay, I see what you're saying. So,
So
yeah,
on
they're-
one,
yeah, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
They filled in that top line as 222,551, correct?
yes,
But it actually should be, now we didn't, yeah, I think that's an error actually, because it should be
Okay.
242,533,
Oh.
yeah.
okay. So I begin to wonder, you know, what is correct? Because, you know, looking at the city's figure, they're at 239. So they're
That's-
close to
That's model.
your figure.
Right.
Yes,
It's close, but
yes,
it's model.
Model.
Yes.
Okay, sometimes the model and the actual are pretty close. Sometimes.
Surprisingly, yeah, it does work sometimes.
So, so the potential is 242,
Yeah.
potential,
Right.
okay. Less the vacancies gives you the effective.
Vacancy, bad
okay.
collection,
Okay.
discounts and loss, yeah.
Okay. So, like you say, the NOIs are close to the same, so,
Yes, they're
Yeah.
within $1,000.
so it's a
we're-
question of cap
It's
rates.
a question of does a building of this vintage deserve a higher cap rate based on how the market perceives risk of older apartment assets in a competitive stretch of what we'll call an apartment district? Yes, that's the issue.
So you feel, you know, for the age of the property, of the subject property, the 6% cap rate is applicable?
Absolutely.
Okay. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
Mr. Story, if you go back to, actually, that was a new property. So you're saying this building has not been renovated, but you're still giving it
I'm saying
a 6.1?
it's not been okay, so there's a material difference between working on the envelope, the roof, or the foundation of the building,
Correct,
and updating the kitchen counters, right?
correct.
That's the kind of stuff that has to be done to subtend the AGI,
Right,
but it doesn't truly extend the effective useful life of the asset. And I believe that the city applies an age variance erroneously because these are not expenses that are.
well, they're changing the effective date, but the effective date actually has no impact whatsoever on the cap rate in any of
It
these
does have
properties.
no, of course it does.
In any of these properties, it does not. You're arguing that they're giving it a different effective date, but in their case, it doesn't actually change the cap rate.
Hold on, but the effective age does change the cap rate, does it not?
Once you get into a certain category, yeah.
Right, but the
And-
properties we're looking at today all fall within, so the effective age has zero impact on the cap rate.
Okay, well,
And-
I would suggest that the market would look at a building built in 1955.
I get
and
that.
They wouldn't say that it's built in 1974, and those would be two different, they would look at those assets as two different things. So I'm saying that the market reacts to vintage in a way that is, in a way that the city is not stratified in an appropriate way.
Okay, thank you.
I have no questions, thank you. Bring us to 2415 Portage Avenue.
Okay. So I'll just do a quick go over here. File number 19-2148, roll number 07060743300. Roll year 2020, April 1/18, assessed value $2,285,055. We don't have enough, an effective age put on it. Two-story building, 25 suites, 16 outdoor parking spots, construction, glass, ceiling, masonry, ground walls. Page 2 is our request for income information, and page 3 is our income value summary. Again, this is jumping ahead. This is a capitalization rate question. We are within $1,500 of each other in terms of net operating income. I did my own. Page 4 is the rank columns. Page 5, you'll see that I did my own little analysis, and I did a scenario on this one using an average of $1,500 a unit, because we've got in 2017 we've got a really high year when it looks like they did a whole bunch of renovations. The model, or rather that is indicated on page 8. You'll see 8 and 9 are the income statements. So it looks like they did a bunch of work on it. I just ran a scenario just to see what it would be like at $1,500 a unit, which is more in the ballpark of what we'd see. Let's say maybe even after these renovations, it could quite possibly be lower. Running just the numbers, we were given the model cap rate comes out to 2.4. We're at 2.285, so that's scenario at $1,500 a unit. It's highly similar to the subject property, and again, for the interest of saving time, we are talking about a cap rate issue. So I'm putting out there that the assessed value of $2.285 million is not too high. That's my evidence, thank you.
Did you say 2.2?
Yeah, I'm sorry, where's that figure?
2.285, that's the modeled assessment.
You show 3,030,000 on your cover
2.285
page.
sounds great.
Which property are we looking at?
Look at 2415.
2415.
I'm looking at 2425.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay,
If we got-
maybe you want to do that one.
We said a couple more.
Okay, that would be a reason to be called to the office. Okay, so this one, we're highly similar, again, in terms of net operating income. We're $70,000 apart. Oops, so to redo this one, sorry.
It'll just make your next presentation a little quicker, Mr. Moore.
It's like they're actually almost the same presentation.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. So, file number 19-3408, roll number 07060744600, 2415 Portage. We've got $3,030,000 on the assessed value. It's a 56 with a 74 effective year bill, 25 suites. Page 2, mailers, they've been good. Subject sale history, 2013, give a sale there of 1975. Model valuation is on page 3, on page 4 is our rental columns. Bracketing the subject property in various categories. So I ran a scenario account and came out to, using the actuals, quite nearly what our model is, accurate. So pages 9 through 16 are some pictures of the property from October 6, 2014, just showing you that there's been some work done to it. That's where the effective age comes from. Again, it's predominantly a question of capitalization rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions for the settlements?
Thank you. Okay, you got the permit in here, and it does say that this is cosmetic work, correct? The description of the permit? It says no mechanical or structural work, other cosmetic work to take place, correct?
Complete renovation of each suite, including creation of a partial wall and removal of a wall, other cosmetic work along with that.
Right, and no mechanical or structural work, right?
Well, not on the permit, but if you look.
That's what
on-
the permit says, right?
Yeah, if you look on page 15, looks like they got some new hot water tank. Got a new hot water tank down there, they got some other newer stuff, so.
We don't need hot water tank, okay. Okay, so that's my question. So we're built in 1956, and again, we have a variant of 1974. So it was based on that permit from 13?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and can you give me a sense of, how do we come to that variant age? Is there some criteria for that? Is it based on how much is spent? Is it based on what part of the building is affected?
Well, inspection does take place in regards to checking out what's been done to confirm what's done. We also look at, because when you adjust the effective year bill, it also adjusts the rent. So when property owners renovate, they can get more money. So if we don't change the effective age, then we're gonna be low on the income side. So when you look at your valuation, you'll see that we're highly similar in terms of income, because
When you say they can get more money, do you mean?
they can generate more rent with a renovated suite than an unrenovated
But
suite.
not necessarily by rental rates, but potentially by curbing vacancy too, right?
Well, given two properties being exactly the same, a renovated one will rent for more than an unrenovated one.
So a tenant will pay a premium if the hot water tank was replaced?
No, I'm talking about like the kitchens and bathrooms.
Right, okay, so the cosmetic work is what subtends the UGI. But what I'm really interested in is because we see a lot of the 1974, so is that benchmarked somehow? Is there, how do we know how the city goes from 56 to 74? We're constantly seeing these 74, so is that the top end of the effective age variance?
No, there's not like a ceiling on the effective age. That was a judgment by the assessor at the time, who did that.
Okay, so it's partially subjective, it's the inspecting assessor.
Inspecting the analysis of the post-renovation actuals to ensure that we're not overstating or understating. We're
It's
just
got to be in
trying-
line with the model somehow.
Well, we want it to be as accurate as possible. That's our job.
Okay. Again, so now you said that you wouldn't characterize a building as an A or a B, but do you think the market would call this an A or a B?
Well, it's fixed up for sure. A or a B. I don't know.
Do you think one parking stall for every 3 suites is what the market's demanding for an A-class low-rise? Or would that be more typical of a B?
It would be more attractive, you're correct, if there was a parking stall for every suite.
So more parking, and that's in the valuation manual as well. So again, CBRE is indicating that an appropriate range for these assets is between 5.75% and 6%. And you've included that in your cap rate information, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and we've established that the older the property gets, the more accelerated the obsolescence become, and that it's reasonable to assume that the cost of ownership increase at the end of an asset's useful economic life. So I'll ask you again, do you not suppose that an adjustment should be made to this cap rate over and above what the model is producing based on the site-specific issues?
I don't think so.
Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your page 5, you have a different value here. Okay, just a slight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but we're gonna go with the page 3,
Yeah,
I would say.
we're really close.
So, when you determine expense ratios, I notice, I guess, on your page 5, it's, close to what you're using, but how is that percentage model-driven, or how is it extracted that you know that, at a certain age, they're gonna run around that figure?
Yeah, we get, that's why we ask for the mailers, just so we can calibrate our model. That's why it's really important for property owners to hand in mailers, because if we don't have mailers, then what do we base our model off of? It's all based on what's submitted to us.
So I just noticed, on the income and expense analysis on page 5, that you're higher in regards to your gross income. So is that normal because it's model-driven and, you're...
In regards to our gross?
Yeah, you're at 290 on page 290,000.
Yep.
Okay, on page 5, and yet you're using, close to 300,000, eh?
Yeah, I'd say, given the size of those numbers, we're pretty close.
And like you say, your NOIs are fairly close, so it's just
Yeah,
a
it's-
matter of cap rate.
Yes.
And as Mr. Story has pointed out, all your presentations to this point has been like at 5.3, so I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that,
I don't have any questions for this.
just one clarification on the age variance. Now, they can be either observed or they can be calculated, is that correct?
It's a judgment by the person who goes out and does the inspection. And when we change the effective age, we look at, if they renovate, we can see that they're able to ask for more rents. We can't change the effective year built, and or the actual year built, but by changing the effective year built to bring the rents to a similar level to what they're getting post-reno, we're able to keep track of that, and by using the effective year built, every year that goes by, there's some depreciation. It's not like we just put this gets this category of income boost every year, no matter what. So the effective age is in place to try and capture the fact that on a go-forward basis, that 74 isn't gonna change, but it's gonna be getting older in our model year after year.
Right, so, but it's never done based on a calculation of new work versus old work?
In terms of like how long ago the work was done?
Well, no, when they do the work as a result of a permit, or
Yeah.
if there's not a permit and there's a total renovation done, or refresh, whichever terminology you wanna use. And they've replaced mostly cosmetic, but they might have done some structural as well.
Mhm.
So the cost of the structural and the other versus what's in existence. So say 20% of the building value versus 80% that's original. Would that come into effect? Or is it strictly on an observed and looking at things like what the rent can command now? Maybe I'm going in a circle here. So you're saying it's strictly on observed, it's
It's
never done on a
observed.
calculated basis?
Not, there's no like 80%, 20% valuation kind of thing.
Right,
These apartments are valued and purchased on how much income they can generate, so recognizing that when things get fixed up, they're gonna be spending less in the immediate horizon after the date that they're fixed up, because they're newer, but it's gonna go back up, right? As it gets older, and that's what the effective year built is there to recognize, and also to ensure that we're assigning accurate potential gross income to these properties.
I thank you. Mr. Story.
Okay, 2415 Portage. Again, we have a 3-story, 2.5-story walk-up, built in 1956. We have 16 one-bedroom units and 9 two-bedroom units for 25 total units. We're located at the northwest corner of Portage and Strathamillan Road in the St. James Assiniboia area. The structure is being used as a multi-family residential building. Gross floor area is 23,262 square feet. And there were some cosmetic renovations, as we pointed out, in October of 2013. And the city deemed it appropriate to adjust the effective age to 1974 as a result. The site is a parallelogram in shape, and according to the department, the records indicate that it's approximately 16,259 square feet, and it is zoned RMFL. Again, as the assessor has rightly pointed out, our NOIs are reasonably close, so this primarily comes down to a cap rate argument. So we are disputing the 5.3%, as we believe that an asset of this vintage, and we have, I should point out that we have captured the fact that some work has been done. According to our study, we would typically apply a rate of 6.25, but based on the fact that there's been some maintenance in 13, we've decided that a 6% cap rate is appropriate. So with that being said, with our NOI and our 6%, capitalized at a 6% cap rate, the resulting market value is therefore $2,791,696, rounded to $2,792,000 for the 2020 assessment cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brothus, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, on your stabilization page, I know you mentioned today a couple times about all the apartments being in that area and there being lots of competition. It's indicated on your stabilization page in rows 4 and 5, that it has a below market average vacancy. Would that not indicate that there is good demand for this property?
It's dead on for 16, but it's, right, but you're, right, the purpose of stabilizing that vacancy rate is to reflect what we might forecast as the standard vacancy allotment over the effective useful life of the asset. So we're accepting the 2.6%, even though, yes, it is in this period, between 15 and 17, it was lower than what the city is modeling.
Okay. My cap questions I asked just to be considered. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Merrick?
I just have just a curiosity question. The discounts involved in, you know, I see that there's some, but there's only 25 units here. So what sort of, you know,
Well, you see that they ramp up in 16 and 17, and what owners have been telling us is that because it's becoming more competitive, a lot of owners for the first time are having to induce tenants with half a month of free rent or a free month or whatever the case may be. So we're seeing more discounts and inducements, but those are captured in the vacancy and collection loss line.
okay. Like you say, Mr. Story, it's basic because your NOIs are the same or close to the same.
Cap rate issue.
Cap rate issue. I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I have
That's
no
my
question.
question. And I have no questions, thank you.
I went to the washroom.
Yeah, we do have a request for a 5-minute break here, so we,
No, then.
okay.
Well, it might be.
I'll call the hearing back to order. The next property we'll be dealing with is 2425, Mr. Assessor. When you're ready, we'll hear from you, please.
That's not your stuff.
Try this one again. 2425 Portage, file number 19-2148, roll number 0706 0743. 43,000. Assessed value $2,285,000. 1955, 25 suites, 16 outdoor parking spots. Mailers have been returned, you see that on page 2, our income value summary on page 3. Page 4 shows the rental columns that support the rent applied to this property. This property is we're within 1,500 on the cap. On the net operating income, so it's a cap rate. 1, you'll see on my workup on page 5, using their actual reported, it's notable that they spent a lot of money. Page 2000, year 2017, which is the mailer found on page 8 for maintenance and decorating, which for 25 suites is a lot. So basically, you're running a scenario at 1,500 a unit as an example, and taking all the other numbers, came up at 2,402,000. We're assessing it at 2,285,000. So it looks like our model assessment is accurate. Be nice to have some breakdown in regards to that 252,000 to 252,551 divided by 25 suites, 10 grand ballpark per suite that year. So I did a bunch of work to the property. It'd be nice to know what's going on there. Probably requires an inspection. Didn't make any changes. Again, this is a cap rate issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions for the assessor?
Thank you. Okay, so again, this is 55 and no age variance, correct?
Yes.
So this building is 63 years old, and it's true to its vintage. Okay, we've talked about useful economic life, costs of ownership. Would you say that older buildings like this are generally more or less desirable than newer buildings for both owners and tenants?
Well, if it's not renovated, it can present a renovation opportunity. I've heard that story told here before, and it looks like in 2017, they spent on a per unit basis 10 grand.
Yeah, there's some CapEx in.
Yeah, so I would dispute the fact that this is a 55 55 building.
That wasn't permitted work, correct?
I don't have any record of permits. no.
So the market, it's safe to say, would still see this as a building from 1955, even though it's been upkept well, it's still a building from 1955, correct?
Well, the actual age is 1955, but at 10 grand a unit, looking at the current condition, it's probably been renovated.
That could be a roof, that could be, that's CapEx, right?
If it was a roof, yeah.
Could be for maintenance, we don't know what it is exactly. Okay, now, you've included a copy of the owner's income statement in your brief.
Yep.
So is it fair to say that the revenues here are unstable, meaning that some years the revenues are higher, some years they're lower? They're not on a constant upward trajectory by any means, are they?
Well, if you see in 2017, you'll notice that there's a triple the vacancy of 2016. And you look at the maintenance and decorating line at 252, that if they're in there renovating suites, they can't be renting them out to people. So I think those two lines are correlated.
Okay, but, okay, so you don't think that there's any threat to the durability of the income stream of this project, given its vintage and given the competition in the surrounding area?
No, definitely not. I mean, the last property had really low vacancy to it. They've done 10,000 R&M per suite in 2017. I'd be really curious to see what the post-reference vacancy rates are.
So owning an older building comes with a higher carrying cost of ownership, correct? Things wear out, these need to be replaced.
Yeah, as things get older, they wear out, and then you have to fix them up.
Right.
Looks like there could be perhaps at the level $10,000 a suite, a holiday from that for a
They
while.
won't spend $10,000 on each suite.
On a per unit basis, well, we're looking overall on the project.
Okay. And again, the broker studies recognize that a higher cap rate should be used for older, lower-rise apartments, and you've included that with the cap rate evidence, correct?
Let's see, CBRE.
Yeah.
I mean, we get all the mailers from the properties in the city. I would say that we're more accurate than CBRE is.
So you do include it. I mean, you don't provide the ratepayer very much. You give us 2 pages. One is the broker's page to show how your study lines up, and then the other is a set of 4 properties, correct?
Yeah,
So we have to rely on what you give us.
Yeah, it's modeled.
Okay. So if it's would you consider this an investment grade property?
Can you define investment grade for me?
A property that would generally be looked at by a institutional investor versus a smaller mom and pop shop.
An institutional investor?
Yeah, by definition, do you think this is what's something we call an investment property?
Based on the current condition and the level of work that they've declared, I'd sure like to inspect it.
Okay, fair enough. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just noticed, I guess on page 8, that they're classifying as unfurnished rentals. So does that mean they have furnished rentals or not?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You don't typically, furnished rentals are not
Okay.
typical.
I'm just wondering why they would classify it as unfurnished, you know, if, yeah.
If there wasn't a furnished rental, I get it.
So, the other thing is, I guess, when you get the sheets, financial sheets, for these properties,
Mhm.
and you can see that the vacancy rate has gone up, 3 times, wouldn't you sort of, question some of these things that, are highlighted, like, when it goes from 11,000 to 36,000, I mean, and you're still using, the model of 2.6, so it's substantial.
Yeah, when you're looking at the vacancy
it more than tripled, but when you look at the maintenance as well,
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
are,
Well, that's, I guess, my next question, so is there any permits taken out or anything like that, or?
no.
So you can't tell us that. And I guess, on your page 5, you talk about income and expense analysis, okay?
Mhm.
And I think what you've probably used is the R&M 1500, eh? And that's probably standard?
Well, that's more realistic. Now, 1,500, typically we've seen between 1,000 and 1,500, and even if, I just was doing this to illustrate that even if we took nearer to the top of the range, that we would still be highly similar to what the model is generating.
So like you say, this is, for the subject property, is 5,200, okay? So what, I guess, my question is, you've done this analysis, but what have you done with the analysis? Just highlighted it, and is it and then, it is applicable to the property, but, if the average is 1,500 and you're still using 1,500, why do the analysis? Lost you? No.
Yeah, you lost.
Well, I lost myself. No, what I'm saying is that if the R&M, if you do the analysis, et cetera, what would be, you can override some of the model figures. So in this
Yeah.
case, would you override?
To 5,200 a unit?
Well, bring the expenses up, because it is probably applicable, instead of, being an average for the number of suites and the age of the property as to when it was built, et cetera. Well, you're using 49%, okay? So maybe, would you not override this because you've, determined that the average is probably, would that be maybe twice the value, maybe 3 times the expense? So
Well-
would you override the expense to, instead of 49%, going up to maybe 55%? Just as a general sort of question,
Mhm. So, if you look at my page 5, there's a line, it's in red, it shows expense ratio. So for 2017, the expense ratio
Well,
was
yeah,
around
it's
43%.
concocted, so, yeah.
That's, they did tons of work
Yes.
to this place. So, an investor looking at what a property would operate on a go-forward basis, especially after overall 10,000 a unit was spent on the property, I would say that, again, I haven't inspected it,
Yeah.
probably a bunch of work's been done in this place, so we look at I'm trying to figure out what the condition it is and what sort of expenses going forward a purchaser would expect to spend. Now, I'm not saying that it should be like Altus cap rate R&Ms, but running a scenario even on the higher side of 1,500 a unit, it's calculating out to 2,402,000. That's a scenario. So it seems that in regards to what the model valuation is putting out, I don't think we're overstating the assessment at all.
So the reason why I ask, I sit in a lot of apartment buildings, and I know I dealt with you quite a few times, and, it only, sheds more light in regards to what is actually going on.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but I know you have the ability to override some of the expenses according to, the models.
Yeah.
So, I think that, possibly, but we haven't heard Mr. Story's, but I would imagine that you're probably close for your NOIs, but I haven't seen that yet, so.
It's, again, it's a
Yeah.
cap rate. It
issue.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
Our
So,
advisor was-
you know what, I just deal with it individually and I don't really look ahead, so, okay,
It just seems like like you're looking at the expense ratios for 15, especially like 15, we're almost at 70% expense ratio, so that's definitely like abnormal. So we just don't, we just average all the numbers up, and if we just plunk it in there and override it, but it doesn't bear in relation to what we see on the market when we're analyzing the income expenses that the property owners submit to us. Then I would love to have this maintenance and decorating and have a whole bunch of subheadings and find out exactly, because then I'd be able to be more accurate.
yeah. I guess, given the time and, you know, your experience in regards to digging, et cetera, you can, you know, I'm not sure whether you can find the time at all or anything like that.
Well, that would involve us
Yes,
trying to contact
yeah,
the owner
Yeah.
and asking them for a breakdown, and they've already, based on what the mailer's asking, they've already complied with. They're just giving us a number that seems way higher than what we'd see on a go-forward basis.
but I guess, you know, once you look at the financial statement too, I mean, that, you know, there's red flags that go up.
And this is a big
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Okay, I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I have no questions for the assessor.
I asked him.
Nope, fine. Maybe
I
have
don't
to-
really either, and I can appreciate where you're coming from when you say, you know, tons of work. Page 5, you've got abnormally high R&M for 1 year. Page 10, you've got something I'm assuming taken from the website, although it doesn't really say anything about new carpeting or new this, new that, it just says what's there.
Yeah,
So
I was
you're
looking.
taking a leap of faith saying that it should be inspected.
Oh, man,
There
for
should be
sure,
some,
for sure.
and as a result of these hearings, I think I've heard that a couple of times today. So is that something the department will follow up on?
Yeah. We wanna make it accurate.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Story, your position, please.
Thank you. Okay, 2425 Portage Avenue. So, again, we're built in 1955, and we're located on the northeast corner of Portage Avenue and Vernon Road. This is in the Silver Heights area. Again, we're being used as a, property is currently being used as a multifamily residential building. Total gross floor area is 23,028 square feet. And the subject property has 11 one-bedroom suites and 11 two-bedroom suites for a total of 22 units. There are 16 outdoor parking stalls reported between the site. It says rectangular in shape, and the site size, according to the assessment department, is 16,221 square feet. It is zoned RMFL. Now again, we're disputing the assessor's capitalization rate of 5.3% again. We are suggesting that due to the vintage, the general condition of the property, that a 6.25 cap rate is appropriate. So that gives us a resulting market value of $1,929,536, rounded to $1,930,000. And again, this is based on the application of a 6 1/4 cap rate in opposition to the city's assessment department's 5.3%. Thank you.
Mr. Story's 25 units, correct? Is that 22?
Did I say, no, I've got 22 here, 11 one-bedrooms and 11 two-bedrooms.
3
It says-
bachelors?
There are 3 bachelors.
Yeah.
You're looking at your
Yeah.
workup sheet
I'm sorry.
on page 6.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's,
That's what your tenant roster is.
Yes.
yes, thank you.
Okay,
So, sorry, was it the crux? of your-
25 is correct, as I review the tenant roster.
Right,
That's correct.
so is that the crux of your presentation?
That's it, it's a cap rate argument of the 5.3% versus the 6.25. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brokus, now you may question the applicant.
Have you inspected this property?
I've done an exterior inspection, but I've not been inside.
Do you have any details in regards to the condition of the property as it relates to the high repair and maintenance expense
Yeah, I
declared?
see that in 2013, there were some major repairs. But no, that, I think there's what you're saying is true, you had a high degree of general building repairs, but then the vacancy speaks to, there's two ways that you can refurbish an apartment building. You can either have the whole building go dark and renovate it all in one shot, or you can renovate each suite based on tenant turnover, and that's what I would suggest they've done here. But it is that large number is a combination of capital expenditures as well as some, what they're calling decorating and general maintenance.
Looking at current condition, do you know between 17 and now if they've continued a high level of repair and maintenance, or is that?
I believe I think that was an isolated.
Okay.
I don't believe that they've continued, if they have, it's certainly not to that degree, but I don't believe so. I think that was, and it's odd to me that it's recognized in 17 because it appears that it began in 13. So I wonder if that was advertised over a number of years and then reported in 1 year. I'd have to check on that.
Do you know if they got an RTB bump from all the renos?
That I'm not sure of, but if you look at the actual rents that they're getting, it doesn't appear to be above the seal.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
Just one question, Mr. Chairman. I guess, Mr. Story, you're using 6.25?
6.25 based on our cap rate study. yes.
Okay, and then the previous one was 6?
I believe so, yeah.
So why the difference of 0.25%?
Well, I can review that, but I believe it is based on our stratification of the effective age. Now, this one is 55 without any substantial structural improvements. So we have a range between 46 and 59 of 6.25. And the previous property we looked at is more, would more likely fall in the range of 1960 to 1979. So we have stratified our cap rates based on age for presumably good locations.
And you've gone to an 8% vacancy rate compared to the city?
Yes, this building has had some vacancy issues, obviously based on the fact that there are renos in 17. So that's, well, we use what we call the most typical year, so in 15 we had 8%. Our average comes out to 8.8, we've used 8, yeah.
Okay, but the bottom line is that your NOIs are close to the same, and as you say,
$500, so-
it's a question of cap rate.
Absolutely.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Paget?
What makes this building different than 155 Trail where you went with a 6% cap rate? It apparently had no renovations either.
155 Trail, I'd have to check on the effective age, I believe it was closer to our order, I think it was 59.
1959 versus
59.
1955?
Right, not a huge difference, but it
Right.
is, we know that there was some work there, so it seems
There was
like
also some work here though, you said there was also work here.
I think the work, from what we understand, the work at Trail is probably more affected with the age or the condition of the property.
Okay.
Just generally, I think I heard you talk about an era where there was grants or incentives to build.
Federal grants in the 1970s.
What years were those?
I was just reading about that, I believe that was from it's the late 1960s or the early 1970s, and it ends in about 1980. So most of the apartment blocks that were built, it's called the, not remembering this properly, but it's called the MERB incentive.
Tax subsidy.
Yeah, and it was, the CMHC were matching mortgages, so, but you had to stay under rent control for a certain amount of time. It was 20 years, from what I understand. So it was an incentive for multifamily housing to be built all across Canada, and that's, so we generally call that, those groups of apartments the subsidy era assets.
And did that factor into your age stratification in your categories?
Yeah, well, you see how the city breaks it down, they claim that there's a material difference between 74 and 75, and we don't, we are, so we look at assets pre-46, then we look at 46 to 59, 1960 to 1979, 1980 to 1997, and 1998 and newer, and that's how we stratify our cap rates. Whereas if you look at the city, they are effectively saying that anything from 1946 to 1997 is about the same, which doesn't seem to make, seems illogical.
Thank you. Is there anything specific about that property that requires a summation or a statement? Thank you. And we'll move on then.
Okay. File number 19-1870, Roman 07, 438-263-000, 3033 Portage Avenue, assessed value $12,205,000. The April 1st, 18 reference date, roll year 2020. 2018 assessment was reduced from 11,563 to 11,037,000. The retirement home, you can see some details on page 7 on this property. So included in the rent, there are hospitality services, there's weekly housekeeping, complimentary scheduled transportation, it's a daily chef prepared meals. So in looking at these, I decided before my time that we're not valuing the business aspect of it. We're just looking at it like it's a standard apartment, and the applicant has done the same. So the valuation on this is all modeled because the income and expenses you'll see, which start on page 17, include hospitality expenses. So just, we use model on this one, and we're, in the interest of saving time again, we're very close on this one as well. I believe we're 15,000 apart on the NOI, which is around the 600,000 dollar mark, which is about 2.5% difference between the applicant and I. So we're highly similar in that regard. So our model valuation is on page 3, and our rental comps are on page 4. 1988 building. So looking at the comps, similar in terms of effective year built. We've got 115 one-bedroom units and 1 2-bedroom. The other ones are more of a split. And our average monthly rent is below what the rent comparables are showing. If you go to page 7, you'll see a description of the property and the location. Layouts and some pictures as well, just in regards to what we're looking at.
Pages 13, 14, 15, 16 is not a really useful picture. I tried to pull pictures off the internet so we can get an idea what sort of quality finishing we're looking at, but there wasn't a lot for me to go on. Based on the columns and our model vacancy, I think that's one of the places the applicant and I differ. I didn't make any change to the property. We're just looking at this as a standard apartment. We're not able to use the income expenses generated and as shown on page 17 onward because decisions have been made not to value it that way, and the applicant and I are both in the same boat in that regard. So based on the rental columns, all parameters we use, that's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions for the assessment?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I agree with most of what you've said here, but we've moved the business element of this property, and we're looking at it as though we're performing on a free and open market, as though we're just an apartment building, correct?
That's how we're evaluating it, yes.
Okay. Now, this building, it's listed as 88, but I dug into it, I believe it's built in 84. But are you aware that this was purposefully built to be a senior home?
I would assume so, yes.
It was never an apartment, it was built to be a senior's home.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, have you physically visited this property?
Not yet.
No? Okay. So you're not aware that you have to travel through 2 commercial parking lots to get to it?
I haven't been there.
Okay, it's behind a Domino's Pizza, Fabutan, and a Daily Grind. Now, this is interesting, this property is owned C3, which is a commercial corridor, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this type of zoning is meant to encourage the delivery of goods and services as opposed to focusing on multifamily, correct?
I don't have the usage chart in front of me, but I'll take your word for it.
Now, from the perspective of an owner, do you think this would be an inferior zoning to the RMFL?
An inferior zoning?
Yeah. It's a commercial corridor versus this area is zoned for commercial services, not for residential.
They seem to be collecting a good amount of money from the people who stay there, so they're doing pretty good.
It's an old folks home, right? So it's a little different. It's a congregate care home, I should say. So they're
Seniors,
seniors.
seniors residents, okay.
I'm starting to get offended.
The point is, no, but it's congregate care, so the rents are the rents, but then they're also, they're taking them to excursions, they have an on-site activities coordinator, there's all, and they feed them all of their meals. Now, that's interesting too, because you realize that none of these suites have full kitchens in them, correct?
It says kitchenette, so.
So a fridge and a microwave, right?
Looking at the pictures, from my memory, I believe you would be correct on my page 15. It shows, it does not show a stove.
Okay. And this is, I've done a few care homes, and that's always an issue, especially when they're purposely built. They're not, is it safe to say that any next potential purchaser would have to re-demise this entire building?
To re-demise it?
To re-demise it so that, to achieve maximal productivity based on the suite mix and the suite size.
Well, to be honest, they'd probably just keep operating as a retirement home.
Okay, but that's not how we're.
But that's not how we're evaluating, but anyone buying it wouldn't be buying it like the way we're evaluating it.
Okay, so, by the valuation manual, the suite mix is considered when developing the assessment of these properties, correct?
People look at suite mixes, yes.
Okay, and what is the suite mix of this property?
Mostly one bedrooms.
All 1 bedrooms?
Yeah.
One, 2 bedroom.
2 bedroom?
I'm sorry, there's
Oh,
one
there's 1
2 bedroom.
2 bedroom, okay.
That's likely
With 2
for-
kitchens.
There's
There's 2 kitchens in the 2 bedroom,
Okay.
according to this.
think that one's available. So, I don't think they're, I think the crux of this business is.
That's just in case.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so, now, so we've got 115 suites. Did you notice that there are only 23 balconies in this building?
No, I haven't noticed that.
And do you think that's typical?
I don't know. I think balcony count varies from building to building.
Okay, and are you aware of the average size of each suite in this building? Sort of reference my last.
I have gross floor area, but again, that would encompass common areas as well, so smaller
Smaller than average,
than
right?
the gross floor area, I would think so.
Okay, so they're about 560 to 600 square feet per suite. Would you say that's typical?
Depending on the age of the building, typically around this age, they'd be a bit bigger,
For
honestly.
1988, they'd be bigger, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so does this building have a basement?
I don't know.
It doesn't have a basement. So the point is that all storage would have to be either off-site or in the suites, but the suites are only 560 square feet.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we've talked about suite mix. So the best description of the current use of this building is congregate care, and it has been for the past 30 years. Okay. So one of the attractive features of this property is its proximity to the Grace Hospital, correct?
If so, that'd be a good thing to have, given the age of the tenants.
Right, but that wouldn't necessarily translate to value for the next potential purchaser unless they were conducting the same business, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
they probably would, to be honest.
So the point is that we've got a building that's 30 years old, it's got very small suites, it's got a completely inadequate suite mix. But has the city looked at the cap rate in any material way and made any adjustments to account for the risk that comes with a building that was purposely built as a care home?
Risk?
Redemising the suites, no storage, commercial zoning, inaccessibility from access and egress point of view.
I don't think they would.
Parking.
Devise the suites.
You think that they would just run 115 suites as bachelors?
They would probably just keep running it as a retirement home.
That's, again, that's not what we're talking about.
I know, that's not what but we're saying what a purchaser would buy it for, and they would buy it for a different way of evaluating it.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt?
Is there an easement to get onto this property?
An
You know?
easement? No, I do not know.
This is not a life lease, is it? No, it's a
No.
seniors rental place
Yes, it's
where they can get meals.
They get 3 meals a day,
Okay.
transportation, activities, it's congregate care, so it's the
Okay.
full, it's all inclusive.
Yeah. I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. McFetchon?
So I believe the term they use generally for these is assisted living
Yes.
Yes.
as opposed to congregate care.
Okay. But assisted living, and I might be wrong, but I believe that there's a difference between the 24-hour supervision and having nurses
No.
on site? No?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't have any questions on this.
I do have a question now that Mr. Merritt's brought it up. I look at page 2 of, I guess I'm jumping ahead, but I look at page 2 of the applicant's brief.
Yeah.
It shows the, I guess, assessment parcel.
Mhm.
Mr. Baracus, how do they access that? Barocas, sorry.
I think there might be an easement,
Yeah.
I think the
that would
parking
make-
lot, the parking lot is, the building is situated like this, and there's a parking lot in front, sort of. But it's, there's other buildings
You have
that
to
run.
drive over somebody else's property.
Yeah.
Right, there has to be
Yeah.
an easement in there
Yeah.
somewhere.
And, yeah, that would make sense looking
Yeah.
at this parcel.
All right, and just for clarification, the assessment department says there's 115 one-bedrooms and 1 two-bedroom,
Yes.
and I'm jumping ahead here again, but the applicant says there's
114 and 1.
114 and 1, but also on the rent roll is 113 and 1.
Well, they may be using one of the, one suite for an activity coordinator or something like that.
Maybe
I think it's
guest-
safe to say there's 115 suites.
Guest suites, perhaps.
I'm sorry?
It could be like guest suites that they're renting out to people, caretaker.
Do you know whether there is a guest suite? or-
Looking at, it's not uncommon. This is revenue, I'm just looking at the expense mailer on page 17, and I'm trying to find, I know this is revenue, second occupancy. So I don't know if that's someone else staying a night, or if that's.
Yeah, they have something here on their statements called guest room revenue, so they might have, if somebody comes in from out of town perhaps.
Guest room, yes, on page 18 at the top.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Story.
Very much. Okay. So, we are at 3033 Portage Avenue, this is the Sturgeon Creek neighborhood. We've got a 13-story assisted living building located on the north side of Portage Avenue, and it's near the corner of Sturgeon Road. Again, as we've established, there's no direct access to this parcel, so there may not be an easement in play, but you certainly need to traverse another owner's property in order to access this parcel. The site size according to the city of Winnipeg is 1.4 acres, and it's zoned C3, which is the commercial corridor zoning. The parcel is irregular in shape, as you can see by the city parcel map. And the subject property has had above average vacancy since 2013. Again, 115 units, 114 one-bedrooms, and 1 two-bedroom suites. And the gross floor area per the assessment department is 101,370 square feet. So we are disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5%. We're using a rate of 5.75% based on our study. Now, occasionally we will add a premium to the cap rate when it comes to buildings that were purposely built for uses like this, but in this situation, we found that 5.75 is appropriate. And we are actually disputing the 2.6% vacancy and adding 5%, as this building has had some vacancy issues in the past. So when we capitalize our NOI, which is reasonably close to the assessors, with a 5.75 cap rate, we come to an indicated market value of $10,351,596, rounded to $10,352,000. And again, that's based solely on a cap rate dispute between 5% and 5.75, as well as a slight increase in vacancy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Brokus, questions?
So, you got on your breakdown the actual vacancy from 11 to 17.
Yeah. There's a huge jump in, I think it's 14.
So,
Oh, sorry, 13. 13 was 18% vacant.
so So you're using 5 just based on the history of this property?
Well, it's, I mean, you have to recognize that the nature of the business leads to some vacancy. So it seems appropriate to have 5%, even though it's been as high as 18. We recognize that part of that is based on the enterprise.
That's my question, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
And I have none.
And I have none. Desire for a summation of all the properties today, or?
I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is in regards to cap rate. There seems to be a real differential between the repair and maintenance per unit of the properties in the cap rate study in comparison to the respective subject properties, and that's something that we've seen throughout this year. In my opinion, the repair and maintenance in the Altus cap rate study does not seem reasonable on a go-forward basis. And adjusting the R&M per unit up would generate lower cap rates, much more similar to what the model is generating. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, summation?
Yes, I agree that we are, the main issues we're having here are based on cap rates, but I would suggest that R&M budgets are not functions of cap rates, they're functions of subtending rents. We found in this cycle that the city has not adequately stratified their cap rates, and I believe that this has led to an aggressively low proposed cap rate study, and it's particularly impactful on properties constructed in the 1950s and 1960s, and I think we've seen a lot of that here today. So I think it's important to consider a more finely tuned stratification of cap rates on a go-forward basis.
Thank you. Thank you both for your presentations today.
Thank you very much.
The orders will come out in due course, and thank you, and I will call the hearing to a close.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Were these supposed to be
Yeah,
distributed?
those are for
All the files?
it's just a rebuttal.
You
Okay.
can just put it up
So
to the bottom.
that's the, yeah, that's the backup for it. Thank
But
you.
if you, like, sorry.
Thank you.
State purpose for the income.
Pardon?
State purpose for the income.
This is,
So,
sorry, so this is rebuttal evidence regarding the assessors?
cap rate study, effectively what it's saying is that 3 of the 4 inputs that the assessor is using to develop their model are inappropriate based on a decision from the Manitoba Municipal Board, as those properties were purchased with the intent to renovate, which leads to there's a distortion there where we're talking about a discount rate in terms of a discounted cash flow, we're talking about buying opportunity. So, Altus went to the municipal board with the city, and the municipal board ruled in their favor. And so that's why, for discussion purposes today, I had mentioned that board was the only appropriate comp for us to discuss, as the others were deemed inappropriate by the municipal board in terms of using them to impute a cap rate study.
Okay, on page 9, the underlined section in the middle of the paragraph said the appellant produced, this is from the municipal board, produced evidence from the purchaser which makes the board question the use of purchase price and income information. The board does not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale. So does that not indicate that renovation should not disqualify a property sale?
Let's go that again. What, I'm sorry.
Page 9?
So quickly.
So
Okay, the board does not accept that any intention,
to renovate should disqualify a property sale. So,
right, that's not talking about creating a cap rate study though, right?
but you're putting this forward to say that because some of the examples, they said that they were gonna renovate, that they
Oh.
shouldn't be.
Right, so it has to be a substantial renovation, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I'm saying that the board does not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale.
Right, and then they go on to say a renovation must be of significant financial investment on the part of an owner, one that will cause future rents to substantially increase and should usually involve modification to an envelope or realignment of structural walls, right?
Okay, so page 12 is Roach, one of our examples.
Right.
And then if you go to where it says on line 32, it was based on their property's net operating income and they assumed a 5% cap rate, which is highly similar to what we have it at.
So I'm not, where is this on?
Page 12?
Page 12, yeah.
Line 32.
Line 32, yeah, okay.
It says they're declaring a 5% cap rate on it, which
Right, that's
is highly
based on-
similar to ours. Does that not substantiate
No,
ours?
No, it absolutely doesn't. You're comparing apples and bananas. We're talking about a rate on return on a financial analysis based, not an investment. We're not talking about a cap rate. You're talking about buying a property with the intention of renovating in order to substantially increase the rents. So by virtue of is that an IMRR, is that a DCF, is that an FMRR? That's not a cap rate.
We're not talking about Rs and Fs here, man. We're talking about, says capitalization rate,
Right.
5%.
But it's reasonable to think that somebody who's filling this out is saying, well, we expect this is a discount rate effectively. It's not appropriate to use when developing a cap rate study. And the board has ruled that, correct?
It says, I'm talking about line 32 here. It
Right.
says the purchase price was based on the property's net operating income.
Right.
So they're basing it on their actual net operating income and they bought it for 5%.
I think you're missing what I'm saying. We bought it with the intention to renovate it, right? So it's different than buying the in-place income stream of a multi-residential apartment, correct? So when we look at forecasting from the perspective of financial analysis, this is a discount rate, not a cap rate, correct?
It says cap rate here.
Okay, well, I would suggest that this is more like a internal rate of return or a discount rate as opposed to a cap rate. And the board is ruling in our favor on that point.
Okay. That's it, thanks.
Any questions or concerns regarding the little evidence?
No?
Okay, thank you. I will call it closed for sure this time.